Okay, it's 9 o'clock. Good morning, everybody. We start off this morning with the public hearing, so I have to do the public hearing address. I'm Mark Pendergraft, and I'll be chairing this public hearing. This is a public hearing for the proposed Regional District of Okanagan-Similkameen bylaws number 2452.25 2024 and number 2800.48 2024 OCP and zoning amendments at 3755 Willowbrook Road, Area C, and number 3089 2025 and number 2800.45 2025 OCP and zoning amendments in electoral areas A, C, D, E, F, and I. The proposed bylaws and related information, including written comments received to date, are available for review at the head table. At this public hearing, all persons wishing to speak will be given an opportunity to do so and are asked to commence their remarks by stating their name and address. Written comments may be submitted before closure of this hearing. Anyone wishing to speak at this hearing is asked to do one of the following. If you are participating in person, please step up to the microphone, and if you are participating by computer, please click the raise hand button, which can be found in the participants panel on the right-hand side of your computer screen. This will indicate that you wish to speak. If you are participating by a phone, please press *3 on your phone's keypad. This will also indicate that you wish to speak. Having indicated that you wish to speak, you will then be placed in a queue until invited to speak. All speakers will be restricted to a time limit of 5 minutes until everyone who wishes to speak has had an opportunity to do so. Anyone wishing to speak a second time may do so by following the same protocol of stepping up to the microphone, selecting the raise hand button on your computer, or by pressing *3 on your phone's keypad. To submit written comments, please submit them prior to the close of this public hearing by emailing them to planning@rdos.bc.ca. Or for those attending in person, placing them at the head table with myself. I will now ask planning staff to outline the specifics for the proposed bylaw. I'm going to turn it over to Ben. Go ahead.
Just wait for the PowerPoint to come up. Okay, the first item for public hearing this morning is proposed official community plan and zoning bylaw amendments in electoral area C. And this is for the property located at 3775 Willowbrook Road. The official community plan designation on this property is resource area, and the zoning is corresponding resource area. Parcel size is 21.98 hectares, and it's not within the ALR or within a designated growth area. And so essentially the proposal is to unhook a portion of the property that's located on the east side of Willowbrook Road from the remainder that's located on the west side of the road. And to do this, amending the zoning of both portions of the property is required to facilitate a two-lot subdivision. So this just shows the portion sort of at the northeast there that's proposed to be unhooked. That's the proposed new parcel, and the remainder is on the other side of the road. And so to do this, an amendment to a 2.76 hectare portion on the east side of Willowbrook Road is required. This would amend the official community plan designation from resource area to small holdings, and a corresponding zoning amendment for that portion is required from resource area to small holdings 4. And because the remainder portion on the west side of the road would be undersized for the resource area zone, a site-specific provision to the resource area zone is also proposed. And just looking at the relevant zoning designations, the resource area zone generally permits a wider range of rural land uses. Single detached dwelling is the permitted principal use, and as far as accessory dwellings, a maximum of 4 up to a maximum of 100 meters square cumulative is permitted as the parcel is over 16 hectares in area. And just as I noted before, that for the specific remainder portion involved in this proposal, site-specific provision would be required, as that portion is 19.1 hectares below the 20-hectare minimum parcel size for subdivision regulation. And for the small holdings 4 zoning, in general, this permits a narrower range of rural residential land uses. Permitted principal use is still a single detached dwelling. However, the maximum number of accessory dwellings is fewer. It'd be a maximum of 1, comprising no more than 125 meters squared. And the minimum parcel size for subdivision in this zone is 2 hectares. Just move on to the second public hearing. Okay, and so this public hearing item is for amendments, regional district initiated amendments to the Okanagan electoral area official community plan and zoning bylaws. And so the purpose of this set of amendments is to address miscellaneous typographical, mapping, and other issues that have been identified through day-to-day use of the regional district's land use bylaws. And the affected bylaws are the Area A, D, and F official community plan bylaws, as well as the Okanagan Valley zoning bylaw, number 2800/2022. And so the first set of changes involved in these amendments is to address mapping issues. So just going by area, in Area A and E, there were some RDOS-owned parkland that still retained rural holding zoning. In Area A official community plan, there were some boundary changes involved for the town of Emergencies due to provincial boundary adjustments. In Area D, there is Crown land that still retained residential zoning, as well as some private land that retained some park zoning. In Area F, there was some properties that were recently acquired by the province to be added to Okanagan Lake Provincial Park that still retained campground and tourist commercial / rural residential zoning. And so to address these issues, the proposed mapping amendments are to essentially rezone the RDOS parklands and the Crown land to the appropriate parks and recreation zone. As well, it's proposed to update the map schedules for the town of Emergencies municipal boundary in the official community plan. It's proposed to rezone a portion of a private parcel in Area D that has park zoning on it to the appropriate low-density residential 2 zone to correct this mapping error. And it's proposed to rezone a portion of one private parcel in relation to those lands that have been added to Okanagan Lake Provincial Park. And this would be to rezone to low-density residential 2 in keeping with surrounding privately held parcels. So this just shows the parcels that are proposed to be corrected to reflect the ACEUS boundary adjustment in 2021 and 2024. Those lands would just be added to the town of ACEUS map schedule in the OCP. And these are the 2 privately held parcels that have zone changes being applied to them. The one on the left there is in Area D, where there is a portion of park zoning on a privately held parcel. Essentially just didn't follow the contours of the parcel boundaries in that area. And then in Area F, there is one privately held parcel that is left over from the sale of adjacent lands to the province for Okanagan Lake Provincial Park. And that privately held parcel is proposed to be rezoned to low-density residential in keeping with the surrounding area. Moving on to the typographical issues, in Area A, there is still a reference to a wildfire interface development permit area. This was the subject of an RDOS strategic project back in 2022, but it was decided not to pursue this designation. And so in light of that not being implemented, it's proposed to remove these references from the Area A official community plan. And there are other issues in the zoning bylaw. So this is related to minimum parcel size provisions for private roads in Bearland strata subdivisions. The zoning bylaw is just unclear whether minimum parcel size requirements apply to these roads designated in a strata plan. And so it's just proposed to introduce amendments that would clarify that these regulations do not apply in such cases. That's the end of my PowerPoint. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I will now declare the public hearing open and ask if there's anybody who wishes to speak to either of these proposed bylaw changes. I'll ask for a second time. Is there anybody wishing to speak to these proposed bylaw changes? I'm not seeing any hands online. Am I missing anybody, Adam? Okay. I'll ask for a third and final time. Is there anybody or any person wishing to speak to this? Hearing none and seeing no hands, I will hereby declare this public hearing closed at 9:11. And thank you, everybody, for your patience. We will move straight into Corporate Services Committee. We have a proposed agenda. Looking for a motion to approve the agenda. Moved, seconded, thank you. All those in favor? Great. Any opposed? Motion carries. First item on the Corporate Services agenda is the Voyant Alert Usage Policy, and I'll go to the CAO.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to ensure regional districts' policies are relevant and reflect current practices. There are a number of recommendations that are in your report. One thing I do want to add before I read the recommendation is that myself and the Deputy CFO attended a number of roadshow budget presentations, and one of the issues were that we didn't do a good enough job to tell people that these meetings are on. And what I want to state is we did. However, there's something in Void Alert that a lot of people, if they sign up, they have an extra ability to know about our meetings. And that is those that don't have internet, smartphones, or receive a newspaper, most of them would have a landline. And Void Alert, actually, if you have a landline and a message machine, will leave a message on there. And that's something that I think that we need to do a better job in advertising to state, because a lot of times people don't sign up for Void Alert just because they don't have the internet or the smartphones. So there's another ability for us to notify them. And with that, the administrative recommendation is that the Void Alert usage policy be adopted as amended in the March 6, 2025 administrative report. Staff's here to answer your questions. Is there a PowerPoint? No PowerPoint.
Okay. I'll go to the board. Direction on this. You're moving it? Mover, is there a seconder? Thank you. It's on the floor. Any discussion? Seeing no hands, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Strategic Action Workshop, over to the CAO.
Thank you. So I'm pleased to have this workshop where the board a number of months ago established your strategic priorities for 2025. It takes the strategic priorities and puts them into essentially a work plan. For 2025 and 2026, there were so many requests from the board and also some jobs and duties that we have to do that we exceeded our capacity. So rather than state we're going to be doing some projects or we're not, all projects are scheduled to be done, but over 2 years. And the board, this is the board's opportunity to take a look at the split that we did. One of the things I do want to just remind the board that at this point, you don't have to be definitive. You can make changes anytime during the year. However, whenever there's a change from one year to another, there has to be an opposite reduction somewhere. So if you want to move something from 2026 to 2025, then we have to move something from 2025 to 2026. Later in the board committee meeting, there's going to be a resolution that actually adopts the strategic plan for 2025. But again, just want to state it's not the last chance. This is something that's a living document and can change at any time. And with that, I would like you to introduce you to Matt Hatch, the administrative assistant for, and was very receptive and pivotal in creating this report to the point where, sorry, Matt, one more thing. To the point where I attended a CAO conference where there was 160 CAOs for the LGMA CAO conference. And we talked briefly about efficiencies. Once the board adopts this officially, this is going to be on the LGMA board where other municipalities and local governments can pull down and use it on their own. So with that, Mr. Hatch.
Thank you, Jim. Good morning. We'll just bring a PowerPoint up. So this will go through an overview of how we got here over the last year and sort of set up what the discussion can follow. Today's workshop provides an overview of the priorities set by the board and the actions that have been provided by staff. The goal is to align the staff actions with the priorities to ensure efficient planning and resource allocation. So today we'll go through the strategic progress tracker, what it looks like, and how we can measure progress moving forward. I'll go through this if it's possible and hold questions till the end. I'm happy to answer anything as we go. So the board has defined the structure approach that's on here. The vision and mission of the RDOS is at the top, followed by the themes and the priorities set by the board and the actions set by the staff. The staff are responsible for implementing the actions to meet the board identified priorities. The board has set the actions and the priorities for the regional district. Staff determine the actions required to achieve the identified priorities. And last year, you may have been familiar with something referred to as the Gantt chart. So this takes that place. So the board has identified 5 key themes and 16 priorities. You're familiar with these, and you've been working with a consultant to develop this over the last few months. I think the last time you may have met with him was the end of 2024. So these include the vibrant and diverse communities, governance, intergovernmental action, natural environment and resiliency, and growth management, and include such priorities such as economic development, community engagement, partnerships with Indigenous communities and municipalities, securing funding, and policy framework. So when we began to work with the staff to build this strategic priority tracker, we had a discussion about core work versus actions. And we've come up with sort of a list to sort of identify what would be considered core work and actions. There is some discrepancy involved, but it was a good opportunity for staff to sort of see the difference between these two. In 2024, there were a lot of projects on the list that ended up being core work. So we've kind of made that differentiation. So core work is that ongoing responsibility necessary for the daily operations, and actions are time-bound projects designed to advance the strategic priorities. So the strategic progress tracker, staff contributed actions to this between November 2024 and January 2025. In January, exempt staff reviewed and assessed FTE hours for each department and division in the organization. So every action was reviewed as a group and collaboratively assigned estimated hours to complete that portion of each action. We spent 2 full days doing that as a group. Departments were given a 3% allocation of hours. So what we did is we've done calculations by department and by division. We can go into that a little bit. And we tried to aim so that we would capture just enough hours to fill that calculation. And that's what you can see in the appendices that have been included. We used urgency, impact, and feasibility for each action, and we rated them with a high and a low rating, and that's what sort of helped guide our the ability to build the 2025 and 2026 plan. So as work is completed and there's capacity within departments, staff can shift actions from the current year or from next year into the current year with the board approval. So that will always be an option through the year. That occurred in 2024. And to highlight 2024, you'll see it later this afternoon. We removed and shifted 100 actions or 100 projects last year. So there were a number of, that happened in June 2024 and December 2024. There were 100 of them that we had on the list, thought we could complete all of them, and ended up shifting them or removing them. So this plan helps us identify what we can take on and has the ability to shift as necessary. So tracking and access. So exempt staff contributed to this. We had exempt staff managers, senior managers, managing directors, the CAO, fire chiefs were included, and the board had an opportunity to submit actions and priorities as well. We will be completing bi-weekly progress tracking. This started last year in June when the 4-day work week was implemented, the trial. And we will continue doing bi-weekly tracking of projects and provide that, that assessment and the ongoing completion through this year. We will provide, or I will provide, a tutorial and some electronic access to the board so that you can follow along with that too. That will be coming soon. So on the staff end of it, this is kind of a snapshot of what it looked like when we were building it. This list grew to nearly 300 action items. So this is a piece of it. What you can see sort of on the first left side of the column is a board priority. If you look back at the themes and the priorities, the 5 themes and the 16 priorities, the 5.3 that you can see in the example here are actions that tie directly back to that priority. So what we did is as we went through the list, we tried to identify as many actions as we could that would tie back to priorities that have been set by the board. The urgency, impact, and feasibility, again, that was a collaborative discussion, and we identified that. Each action's been given a tracking code, and I'll review sort of what the different codes mean as well. And we identified lead departments, divisions, and lead staff for each of those projects. That's kind of where we've got to as we go. The second part of our spreadsheet was to go through each division within each department and allocate estimated number of hours per action. So this is what the 2 days of staff time spent. It was a collaborative discussion, and we went through every group, including the fire departments, and allocated hours to each action. So that's the totals that you see in your appendices is a collaborative total of across the organization here. So 2026 holding is what we've identified as this, the spot where we're building the tier plan. Staff have reviewed and prioritized actions based on multiple criteria and the referendum for the Okanagan Falls municipality, as well as the urgency, impact, and feasibility for actions. And that's how we developed a tier plan. You'll see in Appendix A, there's 58 actions in that list that total 11,240 hours just for holding of next year. Appendix B has 34 actions. That's 6,753 estimated hours. The difference is because the Appendix B is without the incorporation of Okanagan Falls. We had 2 scenarios that we built. So that's where the difference in hours and other projects that would align with that would be removed from that Appendix B. So that's what the difference is there. You've been provided summaries as well. The summaries here highlighted in the red column is for Appendix A and Appendix B. So those are a total combined number of hours by department. And you can see at the bottom of each column about 35,000 hours just on strategic actions. That does not include the core work. Core work is the next column to the right, the 105,000 hours. So those are staff hours that are committed to and working on strategic actions and priorities. There are staff in the organization that may not contribute to actions, so their calculations are not built into that. So this is just staff in each of the departments that are working on those projects. And what we did is on the staff end of it is each department was broken down by division, and we calculated based on each division of who'd be included. So it's quite detailed of how we got there. On the right side of the screen, you can see that within 3% plus and minus range. That was sort of our goal of where we could get to, and staff have kind of worked to balance that. So a lot of time went into balancing that there. Fire departments as well, we wanted to highlight the importance of their role in a lot of the actions that are coming up as well. These are hours on top of all of the things that the other the departments do. So the 8 fire halls, I wanted to show that A and B, they're balanced. There's nothing that we identified that needed to be different in those. But we just wanted to show the amount of hours that we're estimating just to go into the plan currently. So when we speak about actions, there's also operational actions. So a lot of the actions will tie directly to a priority that's been set, one of the 16 by the board. Operational actions may not tie directly to it, and they're just necessary for the organization to run and move forward, and staff have identified those. So those ones will show up in a different chart when we list them as operational. What you can see on the screen is just a snapshot and an example of what we would like to present this information and it'll look like. So we'll have our priority, which is that 3.2 partners with municipalities. That's one of the priorities. And then all of the actions that fit that would be listed underneath with their title and their progress. That progress would then be calculated to show us how each priority is moving forward. There's tracking codes. You may identify that there are different numbers associated with different actions. Any action that would have started in 2024 uses a tracking code with the number 24 dot and then the following numbers. Staff identified actions use the code 25. Board identified actions start with a 259. So we just had to differentiate current year and future years for board actions. If we run out of numbers, we'll get more creative, but 259 is what you can see as that. And then anything that will be moved and held in 2026, we'll start with a 26. So that will give us an idea a year or so from now. When we look back, we can say this project started in 24 just by looking at that tracking code, or 25 just by looking at that tracking code. So as actions are completed, and progress across the organization continues, those averages will be moved for each priority. So each priority will then progress, and that's based on all of the actions that support that. So that's how we'll be reporting some of this information back. That biweekly percentage updates will be completed by managing directors or delegated managers and staff, and they're responsible for keeping it up to date. So this is a zooming out just a little bit. This is a theme, growth and growth management. Again, this is just an example that was built early on, so the list is not accurate in this image. But you can see the theme at the top. The priorities are the 3 that go across the second line, and then the actions would be listed underneath. As those progress, the priority would have progress, right? So we can then come back and say 5.1 is progressing well, we're on track, or we're behind schedule, and what we need to do to try and correct that. So we're trying to balance each of those out. So that's what that will look like. So the appendices that have been supplied, again, Appendix A includes the incorporation of Okanagan Falls. We've estimated designated 4,730 hours across multiple departments. Appendix B removes incorporated related actions and redistributes that time. So we were able to move actions from 2026 into 2025 for that list. So our recommendation for the board for the next steps is that the board can review the proposed appendices A and B, the priorities and the actions, and assess it with strategic goals. And then the identification of the deferred action plan. So the board would adopt both of these and identify that actions can be moved into 2026 at any time. We can move 2026 items back into 2025 as well as new priorities come up through the year. An assessment can be done at any time to ensure that necessary resources are available for the reallocated projects as well. So our recommendation is that the board approve later the 2025 strategic priorities work plan as recommended by staff. There's an alternate recommendation. The board approves 2025 strategic work plan as amended by at the March 6th board meeting. So in closing, the 2025 strategic plan aligns staff efforts with the board's vision and priorities. Clear themes, priorities, and actions provide structure for long-term goals. Bi-weekly updates and tracking ensures accountability. The 2026 holding provides flexibility for emerging needs. Interdepartmental collaboration is required, and we identified that when we had our two-day session with the staff. It was very eye-opening around the room to see which projects were on the list and required support from other departments that we didn't really think that they would be involved in. In previous years, we would just move forward with something, a project. But when you sit down and look at it and you start asking the questions of who needs to be involved at what part, it really was a collaborative effort. And that contributed to a lot of the actions that are here. And then ongoing feedback supports the long-term strategic planning. And that's what we'd like to really focus on. And that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Matt. A couple of questions here. I'll go to Director Gilbert first, and then Director Roberts. Yeah, it might not be working, Adam. Could you double check that mic? Yeah. Swap it out.
This one worked. There we go.
Yeah, that's definitely functional.
So I'll repeat my question to the people online there.
Yeah, I don't believe they heard it.
Yeah, so I guess the question I have is, was there any thought of bringing this list to us to have, what staff see as a priority, especially when it comes to statutory and unstatutory work, for the board to make a decision saying, look, we have a lot of these are all of our priorities. Yeah, we get to see the progress on it, but what are some things that we can actually, make decisions on today and say, well, this is a low priority, or it's been here since the beginning of 2024. No work's been done on it, so let's start removing some of this work to alleviate staff time to focus on those, higher priority, priorities that the board wants.
Go ahead, CAO.
Short answer is yes. All the exempt staff were in the room for 2 days, as we were told. We prioritized everything high and low, and that was one of the things that determined if it's a 25 project or a 26 project. One also, I think, positive about this report is you're going to have complete access to the software. It has the lead for each of the projects. So you don't have to guess. If you want to know where your specific interest is on a specific project, all you need to do is go to the software and it says who you need to call. And that's something new that we've done rather than running around trying to find out who can answer your question.
Go ahead, Matt.
Thank you for the feedback. I think as well, because this is sort of a new thing, we do have the ability in the program to filter by high and low of what staff have identified as that. We did not provide a list or a breakdown of everything. I think each department would be able to speak to exactly which are their priorities, and that's something that we can take and work on in the future. We don't specifically have that, though, captured right now. Yes, but high and low is what we've classified it using the urgency, the impact, and the feasibility.
Follow up, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks through the chair. And I guess the question too is all directors have access to this program? Because I feel like sometimes certain directors, don't have full access to the RDOS system.
Go ahead.
Sure. So the program was built using Microsoft 365, so it's an online platform that can be accessed from a browser. I'd like to provide a session on it, on how to access it, what it looks like, and what sort of other data you can get. The presentation today kind of gives that snapshot and some screen grabs of what it looks like. But when you can actually start going through what it looks like, you can get a little bit more information from it. And then again, ongoing feedback from that. So percentages of a project moving forward is one thing, but if you're looking for a little bit more, the program can show that as well. And yes, everybody will have access to it. Yeah.
Okay. Director Roberts?
Thank you through the chair. Again, I'd really like to thank you for the presentation. And the way I look at it, I'm really excited about the fact that this is a living document. I like that part. Like, for instance, I look at it, I'd encourage your work with planning about, let's have a high level look at zoning in Area G around resources, et cetera. And now I'm seeing like this is about 1,000 hours, but I'm also looking at, we recently in strategic planning talked about governance model in regards to the regional district, and whether or not it's committees, whether or not we're talking about sub-regional issues, all those things. And now I'm looking at going, well, actually, I think my questions around zoning should move back, and I would like to see governance ahead of that. So in regards to that process, is this something that then is at a board meeting that we do, or for instance, you talk to, let's say I talk to the planning department and just say, hey, I understand that, from our discussions with Alan, sorry, I forget his last name, about these, in regards to where we were going with our governance model moving forward, and I see that having a great impact on zoning. So would I move that back? Is that how that process would work? Thank you.
CAO or Matt, which either of you?
So yes, it's a living document, but once the board approves this, only the board could change it. Only the board could add something. And a good example is, let's say we're 1 month in the EOC. We're not going to be able to do what we promised in this strategic priority tracker. We will come as a staff to the board and say, okay, we need so many hours off this list. We'll move it to 2026. But the board will then verify, yes, you can move this off because you're in the EOC. But in your example, for right now, it's still not officially passed, so it can just be done right now. However, once it's passed, you come back to the board and say, I'd like this project off, and I'm recommending this on. So it's something, though, that if it's an area, it's an Area G project, for instance, you'd want to add, if you add an Area G, you'd want G, to be fair.
Okay, go ahead, Director Roberts, follow up.
So thanks through the chair. So follow up. So for instance, where I look at what we talked about before in strategic planning around methods of dealing with our governance model moving forward, that's more all encompassing, but it does affect a specific in Area G. Do I make like a recommendation that, depending on how that will, I'm okay with it pushing zoning back if that's needed. How would I approach that? Because again, it's not specifically Area G, but it's going to affect some of the decisions. Thank you.
Okay, CAO?
So it's new. There's a lot of flexibility. What I would recommend is that you would go to staff and state you want to change this, reduce 1,000 hours, and add I don't know how much the other project hours are right now. We would then, as staff, come and make a list of recommendations of the equivalent hours and come back to the board, and the board then would choose one of 3 or 4 or 5, whatever, to take off.
Okay.
So it is flexible, and the board has complete power of the work. It's a work plan.
Okay, thank you. Director Monteith, online, see a hand? Not hearing from her. I'll go to Director Taylor online.
Yeah, you can hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. I'm just wondering how we distinguish between, or who distinguishes as to whether something is an operational task that is really already budgeted for and something that is over and above that, or a new project.
Go to staff.
So if I'm understanding, so the differentiation between operational actions and priority actions. So staff have sort of determined which ones, again, it's sort of a fluid document. Some actions may fit into multiple priorities, may be operational, may tie to a priority as well. So again, we're trying to present it in a way that supports each of the priorities, but there's a little bit of fluidity too. Do you have a follow-up? Does that provide what you're looking for?
Director Taylor?
Well, I guess I had put forward a number of items, and I'm not sure that they're included yet, or they've been deemed to be part of operations and already budgeted. So I think I'm going to have a detailed discussion with our CAO or heads of planning and community services to just go through my list and see what is actually already in there or needs to be added.
Okay, the CAO's going to respond here.
So, thank you. So there's a number of requests from the board that they wanted in strategic priorities, but they were deemed to be core work. So if you'd like, we can actually give you that list that we've moved over, because core work is something that we would deem continuous, something like, for instance, repairing water mains or adding water mains. If it's a specific project that it's a new water main, that would be new. But if it's something to repair or something to replace, that's core. But we did have a standard. Again, we looked at it as a team. We were all in this room and we discussed what is core and what isn't, but we can provide that to the directors that think that there's something missing.
Okay. Go ahead, Matt.
So we had 60 actions submitted by the board. There were a number of them, and we can provide that information that were duplicates of what staff had already contributed. And again, like the CAO said, that were considered, or staff considered them as core work. But we have all of that information that we can share. So that's sort of where the list got to. But again, things can be added and removed at any time.
Okay, is there any further follow-up to that, Director Taylor?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go back to Director Monteith. I did see she tried to send a chat here, but can you state what you were after? I've got on her chat here, I was hoping to add the Apex Fire Chief's request to the strategic plan. I'm not sure what that was, so she might have to follow up with that if she's not able to speak to us directly. Maybe Adam can try to figure out what's going on there. I'll go to Director Gettens next.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just wanted to sort of echo what Director Taylor was talking about too, about maybe just needing a little bit more deep dive in just to our particular areas. So when I'm looking at the Appendix A that was sent out earlier this week, and on line 196, there's the geotech report recommendations for Area F has 0 hours allocated to it, and it's highlighted a light yellow. Can I just get some clarity on what that means, please? Like that highlighted a light yellow?
Sure, I'll go to staff. Go ahead.
Yes, so that was one action that I think staff need to review and allocate more proper hours to. I'm not sure the clarity. Director, I think I reached out to you, but I think the clarity for the department wasn't there to allocate hours to it. So it remains on the list. but they weren't sure how many hours to allocate. That's where the yellow is just highlighting that it's omitted.
Okay, and how do we see, if I may, Chair, sorry, just as another
Sure,
question.
go ahead.
Thank you. And how do we see as an area, like just as one area, like what's going to get done here? Like I know that this is like I've got like a PDF of this Excel spreadsheet. So I guess what I'm looking to see is how much time is going to be put into area F, and I'd like to see that compared to other areas as well. So because sometimes it feels like there's some areas that are getting a lot of work done and other areas where things are pretty quiet. And how was that balanced and prioritized? So did every rural area get a specific number of hours? And then if you need more, you purchase more hours. Like, how does that work so we can all make sure that all of our local priorities are getting the same amount of attention?
I'll go to the CAO.
So I want to repeat that sign over there. It's gone. It's supposed to say one region working together. The board created the strategic priorities. The board was asked to submit all of the requests that they want for 2025. So we did not say no to anyone. What we did is we're saying we'll do anything that you asked for. However, we couldn't do it all in 1 year. So we're saying we can do it between 25 and 26, but we did not go and say we're going to take some hours away from this electoral area because this other one doesn't have enough. We looked at the projects, we looked at the priorities, and then we're taking it to the board now to say, did we do it right? Did the priorities that we looked at as high priority or low, is that something that you agree with or not? We can supply the number of hours by electoral areas, but that wasn't the goal. The goal is one region working together.
Follow up to that, Director Gettins?
Yeah, I appreciate the one region working together for sure. It's just when you are speaking to your constituents in your area, sometimes sometimes you need to drill down to some of that granular stuff as well. So I'm on board with the big vision, but there's also these local priorities that just need to be addressed as well, recognizing the big purpose. So thanks.
Okay. Staff wanted to comment on that, Matt?
Yes, thank you. In 2024 on the Gantt chart, when we used Microsoft Project to display the information, there was the ability to filter by electoral area and projects that fit under those. Again, this program can be, is evolving, and we can add filters to it so that projects can line up under that just for that viewing. Again, the intent is not to compare between electoral areas, but we can demonstrate and provide a list if that's necessary.
Okay. Any further discussion or questions? Director Coyne Sr., go ahead.
I think this question would be for the CAO. With the new 4-day work week and holidays and everything taken into consideration, how many hours would a typical, let's say a planner, work in a year? So we can put in our minds an idea of how many, like these hours that are on there, how many, I'm going to use the word man days or years of work relates to the hours that are listed there.
I'll go to the CAO.
So the hours that you see in the report are the actual hours that staff works. We took out the holidays. We took out anything to do for the 4-day work week because we wanted to make sure that we're not over-promising and under-delivering. And that's, and going back to 24 was a really good example. There was so many promises that were made that couldn't be done. We moved over the projects to 2020, 2025. Overall, once we determined what we can do, we were 91% successful, but we had to go back and look at the hours. So the hours that you see and that you will see in the software are the specific hours of staff. Because staff's not going to come in and work on their holidays, and the 3 weeks or 4 weeks that they get off, we took that into account.
Okay. Is there a follow-up? Go ahead.
Yeah, that's not the answer that I'm looking for. How many? What I wanted to know was in a year now. in my day in the workforce, it was you work 2,000 hours a year. How many hours a year does a typical RDOS, say, planner work in a year with all, once you take their holidays or sick days or their 4-day work week, all of that into account? That's my question.
Okay, CAO?
So I'll have to get back to you on that because it depends on the person. Some people they start working this year, they're going to get 2 weeks holidays, 3 weeks, and then they get the 4-day work week on top of that. So I can go back to HR and send out a list to all of you it'd be an average because again, I'd either give you 117 different numbers because we all started at different times.
Okay. Director Monteith, I seen a hand flash there. Are you able to speak to us yet?
I am. Thank you. Through the chair.
Go ahead.
I was wondering about the request from the Apex Fire Chief. Was that able to be added to the work plan for 2025?
I'm seeing what was that specific project is what they're asking.
Sorry, the CAO was aware with a presentation that was going to come to the board that was put forward in canceled, I guess. So I'm just looking for some direction on how we move that project forward.
Not sure we could make that. I'll check with staff.
No, I'm not sure which action it is, but we can follow up.
Okay, they'll follow up with you on that directly. Any further questions, discussion on this? Is that a new hand? Oh, I'd go to Director Bush, but I'm going to ask Director Coyne, is that a new hand or a residual? Okay, go ahead, Director Bush.
Yeah, so if the referendum does not pass at Oak Falls, does that mean we'd have that many less hours? Because they got like 4,000 hours here for incorporation.
I think it means more hours to projects, but I'll double check CAO or Matt.
Thank you. Yes, so if the referendum passes, Appendix A, we would move forward with that plan. There would be a substantial amount of hours that staff would need to dedicate to the incorporation. If the referendum does not pass, Appendix B, that would free up over 4,730 hours.
We'll keep our fingers crossed.
So we wanted to be able to provide both scenarios so that you could look at that. Yes.
Okay, it's good to know. Director Gettins, I see a hand from you, and then Director Federico.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to commend the staff on this. I think there is a really, it's an excellent level of thought and detail, and I think it's going to be really, really helpful moving forward. And I appreciate the clarity and the run through we just had. So I just wanted to state that. And you may have covered this already earlier, but I just want to confirm about the unknowns. And if, I'm just thinking for Area F in particular, we needed a bylaw created in response to something that was happening that it wasn't ever on a plan. It sort of just bubbled up, almost not at the same level as an emergency for priority, but it was very important to have that happen. Is there sort of that buffer room built into this somewhere? And and again, apologies if you already explained this, but can you just share a little bit, how do we work? I know we bring it to the board, we ask for some changes, but I just want to make sure that there's that kind of buffer for staff in there just to help with some of these unexpected. Thank you.
We'll go to the CAO.
So there is a buffer. We have a plus or minus 3% for hours overall. And if one of the project turns out to be less hours, we then go back and we go to 26 and come back to the board and say, add some more. But as far as those ones that were on yellow, that buffer would take care of that. So if they're in the 2025 section, they will be done in 2025.
I believe she's referring to a new one throughout the middle of the year that comes up. Is there a buffer to accommodate small projects or not?
Again, it's at plus or minus 3%. As far as the buffer goes, we would know at the time how much hours we've got left. As we finish a project early, we will then come back to the board and that buffers will actually be added and you will know a buffer as it occurs on every 2 weeks. I don't see a buffer happening until at least the middle of the year because then we start knowing the projects are done.
Okay, so at the moment, we're pretty much full, and if anything new is added, we'd have to bump something.
Correct.
Okay. All right, Director Federico?
Thank you, through the chair. I'm not really sure where to start, but one quick question, and I'm sorry if it was covered. How were the hours that are allocated to each of these determined?
CAO or Matt, either of you?
Sure. So thank you for the question. Again, they're estimates. The group that was included senior managers and managers, people that are directly responsible for staff doing the work. So it's a best guess when we took into account what the project could be and how many people would need to be involved. So that's where the hours came from. But it was a collaborative, like 2 full days of going through the list. So we did spend the time and look at all of that. And then since then, we have refined it. So we've added to it, we've revisited, we've had lots of discussions, we've removed hours and shifted. And again, that's kind of where we've landed now.
Follow up, go ahead.
Yeah, sort of different question, but along the same. So our CAO is showing very overprescribed in hours. So in discussions, could some of those have been moved around? Like looking, there's addressed concerns on electrical demand for OK Falls Avery Business Park with Fortis. And that, there's a lot of questions around that. But then, you know, that falls under the CAO's responsibility. So it's just, there's a few others in here that are just like a building inspection office in Princeton, 57 hours. That's there not being utilized. So why is there still time, you know, being allocated to that? What does that kind of look like? There's a few with economic development that are kind of all the same thing, just in different language with a whole bunch of hours. So I don't know, when I was combing through this list, there's a lot of things that popped up where I'm like, I'm not quite sure on this.
CAO?
So I'm the only one that I'm allowing a negative in there. That's the expectation of this position, is that the work gets done. And I don't want it not to get it done at the expense of the organization and the expense of the board. There's anything that I'm involved in, there's certain specific projects that only involve me. And it's something that I'm taking the heat off, the pressure off also off of the managing directors. And some of the other things is I've got the background experience, and while I have great staff, they are busy enough. But like I stated, I'm the only one that I'm allowing a negative in there. And that's common. And if you go back to the reports that I've given you for 2024, there was the majority of your senior managers were negative, huge numbers. And I'm trying to reduce that for them, but I don't want it reduced for me at the expense of the organization. If that answers the question.
I'm not sure. Anything further, Director Federico? Okay. Director, Taylor, and then Monteith?
Yeah, just on that point, and this is probably subject, maybe just park it for further discussion somewhere down the road. I think our CAO probably needs some dedicated EA type assistance. Just throwing it out there.
Okay. Director Monteith, is that a new hand?
Yes, thank you through the chair. Just also wondering about allocation for if we have an active EOC, all of those things. Is that factored into the strategic plan?
Part of that was cut off, but I think he understands your question. So go ahead, CAO.
I hope I understand it. As I stated earlier, you never know what happens with the EOC. It could be anywhere from hopefully nothing to months. we keep track of how many hours and the staff that are in the EOC. At the end of the EOC or at the time that we know how many hours we're in the EOC, we'll come back to the board and say, we're going to need 200 hours or 300, whatever the hours are, to reduce for the 2025. Not eliminate, move over to 2026, or keep it in a pause situation to see if there's any extra time that we can move over. So that's something only the board, as I stated earlier, can add, and only the board can take off. So I don't know if that was the question, though.
I think it was more towards, was there any EOC hours built into this so that, they allowed, and I'll just throw out 100, or is it 0 at the moment?
Answer 0, because we don't know if that would not be fair to the organization. It would be something that would be a slush hours or a slush fund, if I can say. We want to make sure we can meet our promises. And as the EOC hours are accumulated, we will then come back to the board and ask you to take something off.
Okay. Director Fedrigo?
Thank you, through the chair. So if there's something on this list that's identified for one area, but other areas are interested in being included, so like Area F has the Good Neighbor brochure. So if there's a scope and change, or another area is interested in being included, how do we bring about then being added to that task or that scope change?
Okay, CAO?
So I'm the one working on the Good Neighbor policy that's going to be coming to the board in April. It's the amount of work that's involved. It's at a very high level. It's not like some of the municipalities and regional districts where they have the capability and bylaw to follow up on the Good Neighbor. It's a Good Neighbor guide, and it's going to be taken to the board as a whole, not just Area F. And then each one of you can say yes or no if you want to have it be part of it, but it's only a guide. I've got a legal opinion on this, and it's like I stated, it's ready to go. I just had a few other things to do first.
Follow up, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. That sounds great. And it's more like, I know we've brought forward for Area E the dark skies bylaw, and there's interest from other areas to be included in that as well. So just, just how we can kind of get involved. There's some on there that we would like to be.
CAO.
So the legal opinion, and I'll share with the report when you get it, is that we call it a guide at a very high level where there's nothing that would involve the bylaw. A Good Neighbor policy can be two ways. In the research that I've done, there's some that are 10, 15 pages long, and it specifically talks about bylaw issues, which means as soon as you have it as a policy, as a bylaw, you have to follow up on it, or there's legal consequences. But when you see it at the guide level, you can make comments or add something later, and I'll add to the legal opinion. But it is coming to you.
Okay. Is that a new hand, Director Taylor? Or is that a leftover? No response there. Anything further from anybody on this? Sorry, Director Taylor, what was that?
No, sorry, I can't see if my hand's up or down, so sorry about that.
Okay, it's
no
up at
further
the
questions.
moment. Director Coyne, Senior, go ahead.
So just back to my previous question that I asked, I just did some rough and dirty numbers here that are probably inaccurate as all heck, but we're looking at close to 1,000 hours that by the time you take all your stats and holidays out. So just so that everybody understands that 1,000 hours on that chart means an employee's full year of work. So an example would be the APC or OCP for Area H was listed at around 1,200 hours. So that's a little over a year for one employee. So just so that we can wrap our heads around it, that every time you add up numbers to roughly 1,000, that's an employee's workload for the year. So it kind of puts it in perspective when you start looking at the amount of hours that are added up and the amount of employees we have. It makes it a little easier to wrap your head around exactly how busy people have to be able to get it done. That was my whole point of that. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, staff. Matt?
Thank you. So just to add on to the comment, so the starting point when we started evaluating staff FTE hours was 1,820 hours. Before any deductions or removal of any vacation, sick time, 4-day work week, anything like that, was 1,820. We used that across the board and then, across the organization. And then managing directors and managers then evaluated their divisions and departments to try and get that, the breakdown for each individual staff contributing to it. We do have these figures available, not in this summary, but in the detailed summary. And we can look at those calculations and provide that. But on average, when you take away some of the deductions, we're looking around 1,500 to 1,600 or 1,700 hours, depending on each employee. So like CAO said, there's a range, but yes, like Director Coyne said, if you start putting a number to each person that's involved, again, you have to look at the committed hours for just the actions versus all their core work time and anything else that can come up. Core work is key, and it's a large number, but we can provide a breakdown of that. But our estimate on average would be about 1,500 to 1,600 hours per person.
Okay. Anything further from the board on this? Not seeing anything at the moment. Do we need to have a motion on this to send to CAO?
It's in the board agenda for the next meeting.
Okay, it's on the agenda and there's a recommended motion with it.
Correct.
So this is just information and workshop. Director Roberts.
Thank you through the chair. And just for clarification, so this isn't the time, like for instance, if my query earlier, if I wanted to see the governance model, the outcome from the previous review and worked on and in here and say that, you know, you can move, let's say, my zoning back to make sure that that fits in there. Is this the time that we do it, or we do it at the board meeting?
I would recommend at the board meeting.
All right, I do have one question of my own. I'm just curious. I mean, they're listed here from 1 to 200 and some odd. How and when are they, is that in numerical order of importance, or is that just, how do we determine when they're going to start and all that sort of stuff? So, Matt?
Yes, thank you. So each action was identified with a start and end month. You may have caught it in one of the screen grabs, but the detailed sheet has a start and end month. So the important thing to remember is not every action is going to start in January and end in December. There are a number that may start in July, may not start till September. So they're all on the list. They're going to sit idle until we get to that starting time or until capacity is able to bring them more forward. The list that is there and what's in front of you is just sort of as they came in. They're not filtered in any way of
So it's
priority
just
or
as
anything
they
like
came
that.
in, that's how they were put on the list?
Yes.
Okay, Director Federico?
Thank you, through the chair. Once we have access to your documents, will it further explain what some of these projects are? Or if we have questions, do we come in and chat with either managing directors or managers on that?
One of you can.
Yes,
either
thank
of
you. Yes, so there's a lead department, lead division, and lead staff assigned to nearly all of them. The managing director is ultimately responsible for their department, and then lead staff have been identified. So if a lead staff is there and it has somebody's name on it, that is your contact for that. This program will not give you description beyond the high-level information. So if you want to know the scope of the project or anything beyond the start and end month of it, and hours that are estimated, you'd want to go to that lead.
Anything further from anybody? I see a hand still from Director Taylor. Is that something new?
New hand. Couple of quick questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Is it possible to work on the format? Maybe I'm the only one, but I'd love to see the column headings at the top of every page. And I'd like to see, conceivably, you can do
We sort of lost you. You there, Director Taylor? Seem to have lost him. Go ahead, staff.
I can provide a little bit of information. So in the program itself, there's cells that are locked. So as you're scrolling and moving around the Excel program, headings are all captured. On the appendices, they're not. That's just perhaps the way it was printed or something like that. But in the program, it's very easy to move around and sort of see and make sure that things are organized.
Okay. So that program, how are we going to get access to that? That would be the next question. Can you send us a link that or can you put a link on our computers for us so that we just have to hit that versus hunt down an email or try to remember something?
Yes, I could visit your each home and install it. No, it's because
No.
because the application is through a web browser. Once you open the link, you can bookmark it. We can include instructions on how to bookmark that. Staff have done that. They're able to then go back and revisit it. There's a number of tabs across this program. You can see all of the stuff that where we started a few months ago. Those have sort of been closed off, and now we're focusing on the active worksheets. After the referendum, we'll refine it more. Oops, sorry, put my hands down. But yes, it's the link will be shared, and I'd like to do a walkthrough so that you can see. Similar to how I gave kind of an overview of where we got to today, I think it'd be important before you start diving into the spreadsheet that we can just do a run through of what it looks like, because it is quite detailed. There's a lot of data, and we want you to be part of that, if that answers your question.
Okay. Anybody else have anything further? Not seeing anything. We are quite a bit ahead of schedule here and at the end of this agenda. Unless there's something anybody wants to ask in this, I am going to look for a motion to adjourn our Corporate Services Committee. Moved, seconded, all in favor. Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned, and we really can't start the board meeting ahead of schedule. So we've got a bit of a break. I'm going to just inquire. Just waiting for all staff to get back in here. Okay, we'll reconvene the regular board meeting. I didn't get the opportunity to ask if there was anything that should be removed off the consent agenda to put into the regular portion of the meeting. Is there anything that needs to be removed off the consent agenda by anybody? All right, seeing nothing there, we'll move straight on into Development Services, Building Inspection, item B1, CAO.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to seek direction from the Regional District Board regarding enforcement against the property owners of 995 Eagle Place, legally described as Lot 13, District Lot 2709, in relation to the placement of a structure without a building permit. And the administration recommendation is that Section 302 notice of title, Section Section 302 of the Local Government Act and Section 57 of the Community Charter made applicable to the regional district by Section 302 of the LGA be filed against the title of land described as Lot 13, District Lot 2709, that certain works have been undertaken on the lands contrary to the Regional District of Okanagan-Similkameen Building Bylaw 2805, 2018, Civic Address 995 Eagle Place, and staff's here to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, before we discuss this any further, I'm going to ask if the owner or applicant of that specific property at 995 Eagle Place in rural Osoyoos is in the room or online and wants to address the board. Not seeing anybody stepping up in the room. Is anybody online, Adam, that you're seeing raise their hand if they want to speak? Okay, I would ask that someone move the recommended motion for me on that, please. Moved, seconded, thank you. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. That brings us down to item C1, Agricultural Land Commission referral in Area C, CAO.
Thank you. The purpose of this report is an application to the Agricultural Land Commission under Section 20.1.2 of the Agricultural Land Commission Act has been referred to the regional district in order to allow an additional 162 square meter single detached dwelling on a parcel of land within the agricultural land reserve. And the recommended motion is that the RDOS board not authorize the application for a non-adherent residential use additional residence for farm use at 4315 Highway 97, Lot 309, to proceed to Agricultural Land Commission. And again, staff's here to answer your questions.
Okay, I will go to Director Chahal on this. Direction.
Through the chair, I would like to make the alternative motion to authorize the application.
Okay, so you're moving authorization. It's seconded. Any discussion on that? Not seeing any hands. This is a corporate vote, so just double check with corporate officer that this is corporate.
Sorry, because it is a referral from the board, it would be a corporate vote, but if
Okay.
it is to, yeah, sorry, it is.
Okay, no problem. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. That's down to C2, the Agricultural Land Commission referral in Area I, CAO.
Thank you. An application has been submitted to Agricultural Land Commission under Section 20 of the ALC and referred to the regional district in order to allow for a home industry as a non-farm use within the agricultural land reserve. And the administrative recommendation is that the RDOS board authorize the application to allow for a home industry as a non-farm use on the parcel located at 149 Bobcat Road to proceed to Agricultural Land Commission. Staff's here to answer questions.
Okay, thank you. I will ask Director Monteith for direction on this one.
Thank you. Able to make the recommendation.
The staff recommended motion.
Yes, please.
If you could give me a thumbs up on that, just to be sure we heard you correctly. Okay, that's the one. Thank you. Seconded, it's on the floor. Any discussion on it? Again, corporate vote. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. C3, a petition to enter the service area in Area D, CAO.
Thank you. The applicant has submitted a petition to request to the regional district to seek to include 0.5 hectare portion of the property at 1348 Cedar Street in the Okanagan Falls Water Service area. And the recommended motion is that the Okanagan Falls Water Service Establishment Bylaw 2978.03 2025 be in a bylaw to extend the Okanagan Falls Water Service area to include an approximately 0.5 hectares area of the land described as KAP 4397 which is 1348 Cedar Street, be read a first, second, and third time. And again, staff's here to answer questions.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to Director Taylor. Direction.
Yeah, I'd move the administrative motion, please.
Moved and seconded. It's on the floor. Any discussion on this one? Fairly straightforward. Again, corporate. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. C4, regulating the creation of a new private utility, CAO.
Thank you. You're going to have to bear with me because I see the recommendation is a paragraph. To seek direction related to proposed amendments contemplating the regulation of a private water system and the sewer and utility, with the administrative recommendation is that the following amendment by law to regulate the creation of a new private utilities be read a first, second time and proceed to the public hearing with the official community plan amendment bylaw 3045, zoning amendment bylaw 3046, subdivision servicing and development bylaw 29.01, and development procedure amendment bylaw 2500.34, and that the board of directors consider the process as outlined in this report from the Chief Administrative Officer dated March 6, 2025 to be appropriate consultation of the proposed Section 475 of the Local Government Act, and in accordance with Section 477 of the Local Government Act, the Board of Directors has considered amendment bylaw 3045, 2025 in conjunction with its financial and applicable waste management plan, and that the holding of a public hearing be scheduled for the Regional District Board meeting of March 20th, 2025, and that staff give notice of the public hearing in accordance with the requirements of the Local Government Act. And again, staff's here to answer questions.
All right, direction from the board on this. Director, yeah, by all means. Director Roberts.
Thank you. And I've made my opinion known. And again, I have a problem with this, not with that this is a solution for an issue where we end up with these water systems in disarray, but I see it as I look at it as a bit of an overreach because we're having to clean up what's been not looked after effectively by those ministries that are responsible in the province. For instance, I see the actual issue being people aren't being privately, or even whether or not it's an improvement district or it's a irrigation district, being held accountable by the province, and then they're letting things go awry and eventually breaking down, and then us taking over. I have big concerns about our capacity. I also look at it, yes, government can do these things. They can do them very effectively. However, they do it at a higher cost. A lot of times, for instance, if you're dealing with something right now, if I have somebody that's a professional, that's a neighbor, I can get him to help me dig a hole. However, that hole digging in regards to local government comes at a lot higher cost. So I understand why this is forward. I understand how we've ended up in a situation where we take these water systems or get asked to take them when they're completely falling apart, and it's a shame. But I see it as a letdown on the ministries that are responsible, whether or not it's health, whether or not it's municipal affairs, that they themselves let these things go and don't hold them accountable. And then in the long run, it's the taxpayer or the person with the water system or the sewer system that ends up paying the cost. So, again, I have a challenge voting for this at all. I've made that known before. I just wanted to make that known again. Thank you.
Okay. Director Federico, did you have your hand up first, and then Director Bush?
Thank you, through the chair. A question and then a kind of follow-up statement with that. So can this be only for certain areas? Like, can some of us opt out of it? Like, I can see the value in some areas where this would be pertinent, but for some of us who aren't in agreement with, is there that option for us to not be involved?
I'll go to staff.
Chair, to answer the director's question, ideally we have a consistent regional approach, and It's hard based on an area to determine whether private utility would make sense or not. But with that, what we're trying to do here, if this were to move forward, there's still the ability for a developer to come forward with a DVP. And that's when we'd be able to have the conversation and potentially for whatever they're coming forward with, it could make sense to go that route, and then we would grant the DVP with some conditions and some oversight. So that would be the preferred approach.
Okay, follow up?
Yeah. So, and very much appreciating that. We talk a lot about having bylaws and rules in place, and then for it to be like, well, we'll have this rule, but if you want to come for a DVP or you want outside of that, that's fine. You can come to us for that. So I'm struggling with that piece a little bit. Also, just looking at our area and looking at the current OCP and growth boundary map, and then still in the phases of looking at the RGS, there's no, well, not no, but the foreseeable future of large subdivision growth is very minimal. And so while this would take into consideration the smaller ones, I anticipate it's mainly for the larger ones, and I'm just not seeing the opportunities at the moment in our community for this. So for those reasons, I'm not in support of this at this time.
Okay, Director Bush.
This is just strictly for new irrigate or whatever. It's like Director Roberts was talking about existing ones. This doesn't include existing ones.
It
right?
doesn't
Just
affect
want to
the
get that
existing.
straight.
No. It's
just
only for any new
Yeah,
systems.
exactly.
Okay, Director Gilbert.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. Just a clarification, is this a rural vote or a corporate vote?
This is a rural vote.
Okay. Director Taylor, is that a new hand?
Yeah, it is.
Go ahead.
I'd speak in support of the motion. I think there's, the way the system's set right now, it is highly unlikely that a board or a private operator would put aside the potentially millions you need in reserves if you're going to fund this without grants. And they're not eligible for grants. So, and they're not eligible to the low bank rates that we get. I don't even know if irrigation districts would be eligible for a bank loan because they're not eligible for MFA either. So from my perspective, I see that things have changed. Irrigation districts require massively bigger infrastructure and asset sheet now. And I think this is the only way for them to survive, really. I don't think creating an irrigation district at this point or a private system, large scale, is long-term sustainable right from day one.
Okay. Just to be sure, we've got no motion on the floor at the moment. So questions or discussion? Director Roberts?
Thank you. And a question for staff. It's probably in here, and I did see it at one point in time, but just help me remember in regards to the size that we're saying that this is initiating. It's not a duplex and a neighboring house. It's where does this interject or become an issue or considered a water system that would be covered by this? Thank you.
I'll go to staff. My suspicion is more than one connection, but I will go to staff.
Chair, to answer the director's question, so we did have some conversation and ultimately around, does it make sense to choose a number, i.e. 4 units or 6 units or 8 units? And the more we discussed it, the more we came back to, it's really going to depend on the situation. And so we haven't put a number to that. So again, it leaves the decision with the board if a developer comes forward for a DVP. And for me, that's the place I kept going back to. Right now, they come forward and propose a private utility and they can proceed with that. It's not our decision. Whereas if we go this route, it'd be a decision that would come to the board and then they have the opportunity to make that decision.
The definition, though, of a private utility is more than one connection, just to be clear?
Correct, Chair, yes.
Okay. Follow up, go ahead.
So seeing that, for instance, could even, an example, it doesn't count, but it's like I've got a little cottage on my property, I put in another hookup, that would, if I had to do it privately and have my own well, that would be something that'd be considered. And so now my question that, to back that up is, what is the capacity? Like, what are we looking at? For instance, we look at the few that we've seen now, we've decided that we needed an electrician, which, because of the amount of systems that we're dealing with, you know, where is this looking at? I know that I have at least with multiple connections, and again, I'm using historical, not new. I'm just using it for a number in my head. Like I've got a minimum of 8 units at our mobile home and RV parks and stuff like that. That'd be 8 water systems, 4 of which have their own sewer plant. And then, so to me, that's a huge number to look after. So I'm looking at, do we have any understanding of capacity? Having a bylaw like this, where do we see that growth going, and you know, what's the potential with this going way beyond our ability to manage? So my question's capacity.
Go ahead, staff.
Chair, to answer the director's question, capacity, again, when these developments come forward, we have the ability to review them at that point in time. And again, there could be a scenario where allowing a DVP makes sense. We know the operator, they have a good plan, we have confidence. But there could be a scenario where it's only a couple lots we're talking about, but it's in an area where we know we will be extending services and we'd want to tie in and we'd want to own them. And so there's a multitude of different scenarios. But for me, the key is that we're dealing with this up front. So if we are taking on these private systems, we're taking them on from the beginning where we have the ability to plan accordingly, staff-wise, user fees, reserve funds, and ultimately ensure that the asset is being managed appropriately so that 30 years from now, they aren't in the state of some of the current systems that are being considered to take over from the RDOS. And of course, that's when you know, the users are upset because now they're being told you got to spend excess money, whereas those monies would be being collected all along appropriately so that you wouldn't have these big hits down the road.
Okay, Director Federico? No? Anybody else? Director Gettens, I see a hand online.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks for the explanation from staff on some of this. It's interesting to me because, you know, when we think about small septic systems on like a few townhouses and that kind of thing versus maybe what some of the systems that we're looking at acquiring now with the regional district, like there's this big, huge spread. I do understand the value of the DVP and looking at each one individually. My question is, we have a lot of plans to expand water systems in some areas that might take decades to come to fruition. So if we have a small developer wanting to put a townhome complex that could be reasonably connected to the water system that's existing, but the development isn't quite large enough to make that a feasible cost for the developer to take on, but they could do a pretty straightforward septic system that those owners use. Would they be able to do the DVP? Like I'm talking specifically about your reference to supporting existing water infrastructure and trying to get developments to hook into those rather than all these individual ones. But I just want to make sure that if we have a developer and they're looking at putting in some kind of housing, that this won't be a barrier to them to have to hook up. Like we'll have that opportunity to discuss that further with them.
Go to staff.
Chair, to answer the question, again, really, how I kind of would summarize this is that it's forcing those conversations to happen. Whereas right now, that developer could come forward with their private utility, and we don't have the ability. The board doesn't have the ability to make that decision. In this scenario, if they want to do it as a private system, then they request the DVP, and then the conversation is had, and it's a board decision. So it gives the board that control. And again, there is no perfect answer here, but as the local government, we want to be doing the responsible thing and taking care of the residents and making sure that there's a good plan in place.
Okay. Someone prepared to move this, or where are we headed with it? Rural directors.
Oh, I'll move the motion.
I'll second
Director
it.
Taylor, you're moving it, and seconder,
Okay,
Director
I'm happy to
Gittens?
move it or second it.
All right. I've got, between the two of you, it's on the floor. So. Any further discussion? Director Gilbert?
Yeah, thanks through the chair. This is just because I don't have a vote on this, I'm just kind of out of curiosity with this. If whether this passes or not, just I want to. There was a comment that was made that was about areas opting in and out. I just kind of want to know the legality of that. If an area, let's say, opts out of this, for example, doesn't want to have that unified approach, and what's the legality of it if we start seeing those systems fail in that area and sludge and waste are coming into the lake and seeping into other areas? Is there the possibility? What's the legality around that?
I don't know if there's an answer for that, but go to staff.
Chair, I'm not. I don't have the pedigree to offer a legal opinion, but maybe what I would offer is that. I'm not sure about legally, but certainly there's going to be pressure on the board if a system goes private and then, just like there is now, if a system goes private and then in 20, 30 years it's failing, the pressure is going to be on the board and the regional district to step in and try to correct it, which again is what we're trying to not recreate history here.
Okay. Director. Oh, go ahead. Director Coyne? Senior?
Yeah, last time this came to the board, it was asked if the staff would go out to other regional districts and find out how many other regional districts are making this mandatory. As I understand, like GVRD is, or not GVRD, TNRD is going in exactly the opposite direction. So I'd like to know what staff found out for the province-wide.
I'll go to staff if there's any idea on that.
Chair, so I think Mr. Garish has a couple examples he can share. I know for myself, I reached out to the Central Okanagan Regional District, and they're taking a similar approach. Again, just wanting to, for essential services like water and sewer, the most responsible approach is the local government managing them and taking on these new systems.
Okay. Follow up to that, Director Coyne? No? Okay, Director Bloomfield?
Yeah, and thank you through the chair. And similar situation for me as a municipal director. I don't have a vote in this, but I do have some observations that may help the electoral area directors to make a decision. The very reason that this is in front of us now is because this board has spent an enormous amount of time dealing with failed systems over the past few years, and it's a considerable expense to the regional district as a whole. We can say that the expenses are down to that users on those systems, but there is still an enormous amount of time that has been spent by RDOS staff that has affected the operation of this regional district. And the reason that we've had to deal with it is because there's been an extreme lack of enforcement of regulations and enforcement of regulations by the provincial government over these systems over the past decades. And I would say that if the provincial government changes their regulations and changes their enforcement models on private systems, private utility systems, then you can certainly have the opportunity to alter this bylaw and these regulations as you see fit. But I think that it's, you know, it's, we're here and, you know, this problem won't go away if we don't deal with it. On the question of the size of units, great discussion, and I have said myself in the past that, you know, it doesn't make sense for the regional district to be taking over units of, you know, systems with 2 or 3 hookups on it. You know, I just don't see how that's going to work. A question on that regard is that if there were 2 properties on the same title, 2 houses on the same title using the septic system, is that a joint system, or would it be 2 different titles using the same system?
I'll ask staff if they can clarify that.
It would have to be 2 titles to dictate 2 systems. The other, if I may, Chair, the other comment I should have shared when we discussed a number and what if a number makes sense. The other concern, of course, is if we said 6 as an example, then does it encourage these private systems to come in under that number, and then we end up with a whole bunch of these tiny little systems, which again is not ideal.
Okay, good thought. Am I missing anybody, Director Roberts?
Thank you. So the question, this adds another question. So if we're talking property-wise, but I've got like mobile home parks, it's one property. It's got a bunch of RVs on it, and they've got their own septic sewer system, and they've got, right? They've got their one pump, their one system. And again, I'm looking at the anomaly between dealing with, you know, the larger urban area, and most of the areas that we're looking at is in area G and B, agricultural land with 4 or 5 different buildings, different hookups off a well or a couple different wells. So I'm looking at it slightly different, but my initial question that I wanted to pose, area G and B do not have building bylaws, do not have zoning, so there would be no DBP. How does this work within our areas? Thank you.
I'll go to staff. That's a good question.
So through the chair, so correct, there is no zoning in B and G, but there is a subdivision servicing bylaw. And that's one of the bylaws being proposed for amendments. And so that's how that would be enforced in those electoral areas. So for subdivisions.
Okay. Director Federico?
Thank you through the chair. So maybe I'm struggling to wrap my head around this. But in theory, then if it's different parcels, so say everyone on one street needs new septic systems, and that's going to cost them $40,000+. And they say, hey, if we band together to put in one system and we work together as a street, and then we do this, we come forward under this new system, then effectively could be handed over to the RD to now become a public system. So could street blocks within our community start to then assemble to piece together a private system or put together a system that would then be turned over to the RD for management? I don't know if I'm explaining myself well enough, but.
I'm not sure that's the intent of this, but let's see what staff.
Chair, if I'm understanding correct, essentially you're creating a service area, which yes, you have the ability to do that, and the RDOS would take it over.
Anything further? Again, this is a rural vote. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? I need the hands for those opposed. Directors Roberts and Federico and Coyne. The motion does carry. Down to C5, business license regulation, CAO.
Thank you. The purpose of this report is to introduce business regulations and licensing requirements in relation to short-term rental accommodations for electoral areas A, B, D, E, and F. And the recommended motion is that the Regional District of Okanagan-Similkameen Business License Bylaw 3100-2025, Chief Administrative Officer Delegation Amendment Bylaw 3033.01-2025, Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw 3050.04-2025, and municipal ticketing information amendment bylaw 2328.05, 2025 be read a first, second, and third time, and that the Board of Directors consider the process as outlined in this report from the Chief Administrative Officer dated March 6, 2025, to be appropriate notification for the purpose of Section 59 of the Community Charter. Staff's here to answer any questions.
Okay. Director Gilbert?
Yeah, thanks through the chair. I'll move the staff recommendation.
Mover, is there a seconder? Seconded, it's on the floor. Discussion, Director Federico, then Bush.
Thank you through the chair. I have a question for staff. So the proposed $500 fee, that is just for the administrative costs. Like it would then be cost recovery into bylaw officer. And is that just simply on the business license side? So when I ask, because if we're charging $500 for those that are in a principal residence versus $500 for someone who's non-principal, the house that there isn't somebody on site when guests are there is likely going to cause more of a disturbance and potential bylaw time as opposed to a property with an owner on site. So is this a reflection of staff time and the administrative cost to process the licenses, or then into the bylaw enforcement in how it's operation of the short-term rental?
Go to staff.
Through the chair. So it just reflects the administrative time to process the applications. And I think it's clarified in the report as well, just add on to that, that we don't have experience processing these applications at this point. So it is a rough estimate at the start. And I think in the schedule as well was included a list of similar fees across the regions that helped the staff assessment in setting the $500 fee.
Okay, Director Bush.
Yes, in talking with some of the short-term rental people we have in Area B, ours is all seasonal, and they'd be charged the same rate as a full-term short-term rental like in Victoria or Vancouver or Penticton or whatever, but being in Costin, it's just seasonal, and these people want to remove Area B from the business license.
Is Area B part of this at the moment? Okay, so that would be a new request. CAO, how do we?
The recommended motion could be amended. However, just to state, seasonal or not, if someone needs a license for that, it's going to cost the same amount of money. It's regardless if it's full-time rental or not.
Okay. Question, Director Coyne?
Yeah. So originally when this all came up, we were told that the business license fee was going to pay for the bylaw officers. Now we're being told it's a processing fee. That's a pretty expensive processing fee for a business license.
CAO?
So originally, if you go back in time, I recommended $350 for the license, which would have paid for the bylaw. I believe this $500 is, you're right, it's more than just the processing fees. So in my mind, all along, it's been, and I accepted from the 350 to 500 because I know that there'd be a processing fee. My fee that I originally recommended was the bylaw cost. So I know what you guys calculated, but I also calculated it.
Okay, follow up, Director Coyne?
Well, I think we need clarity on what the money's going towards. If that's the case, if it's going towards bylaw and processing, then that's I guess appropriate, but not just processing.
Okay, CAO?
So the board authorized contingent, the bylaw coordinator, contingent on this bylaw for licensing adopted. That's where when I did the analysis, that's where I saw a portion of it being funded, because it's not all 9 are being part of it, so that it has to be funded somehow for those that are involved. So I see it as the funding for that portion of the short-term rentals is going to be an extra bylaw expense, and that's how a portion of it will be funded. And that's how you were told, and if you go back to the budget.
So it is part of that $500 fee?
As far as I'm concerned, yes.
Okay. Director Gettens.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a
Few
question.
others online. but-
Sorry? Oh.
Go ahead.
I just have a question just for clarity on Area F. So Area F is part of the Business Licensing Services Establishment bylaw. And then this bylaw is in particular or specific to short-term rentals and the business license to have the short-term rentals. Is that correct?
They're shaking their head yes. I'm not sure that you can see that, but it
Okay,
also
sorry.
does
Thank
include bed and breakfasts. Is that correct?
That is
Staff?
correct, yes.
Thank
Okay.
you. And then, so because Area F is not requiring citizens to have a business license for their short-term rental or their Airbnb, but we have opted into the provincial regulations of primary residence. When a citizen goes to list their short-term rental in their primary home, where it's asking for the business license, what do it's just, I haven't done this before. So what do citizens stay there? Because we haven't enforced this, the business licenses are not enforced in Area F. So they're not then required to provide a business license. Has staff looked at that at all or had any clarity on that, please?
Not sure if they can, but I'll let them take a crack at it.
Thank you.
Okay, so through the chair, so it's our understanding at the staff level that when there's a local government area, or in the case of a regional district, an electoral area that is not requiring business licensing, but has allowed through its zoning bylaw, short-term rental accommodation to be a permitted use, that there would then be no requirement to list a business license on the provincial registry because it's not required for that particular electoral area. But that's our imperfect understanding of the provincial requirements. So I hope that helps.
Okay, that's the understanding at the present time. So, all right, Directors Monteith and Taylor.
Hi, through the chair. So as the regional district is not allowed to make a profit, I'm fearful that if we charge $500, we're putting ourselves in a position of making a profit. So I would rather see a fee of $300, figure out what the costs are really going to be, and then next year if we need to increase it, we could do so. But to start high and overcharge, I think would be a downfall to the process.
I'll go to the CAO on that, but I think my preference would be the opposite, to make sure we don't have to go to tax requisition to cover any losses, but CAO?
Well, you stole my thunder.
Ah.
I'd rather have it that way. It is a learning curve. And at the end of the day, the director's correct. By law, we cannot make a profit, but this is the first time that we've had to do this, and we would analyze it year two. But what I don't want is to have it low and then come back and actually have it come back and say, we need tax money to pay for the prior year and increase the rates the current year.
Okay. Director Taylor, and then Bush and Coyne.
Okay. I'm strongly in support of this. I don't see that we're at the perfect place yet. I don't feel we are, but we're out of time. People in this line of business will require this year to register as of May 1st. So I compliment staff for getting it done. I think we've given them a pretty complex set of needs to deal with all the different areas, and I think we've got to start. I think there are probably, I'm not the only one that sees some additional things that we need to address, and I would like to perhaps ask for a mandatory review of this within 12 months with amendments or consideration for amendments that would need to be brought forward. But in the meantime, we need to get this done.
Okay. Director Bush?
Yeah, so I'd like to make amendment to this motion to remove Area B.
Okay, you're making an amendment motion to amend, it's seconded. So on the amendment, any discussion on the amendment? We've heard his rationale for taking it out. Oh, is it on the amendment? Okay, go ahead, Director Conans.
Does that mean if, I'm just curious for the efficiency of the board and the RDOS, does that mean that if a bylaw officer was called, he could not go out to Area B?
CAO.
You can go out there. It's still breaking one of our bylaws. It just means that there wouldn't be any funding from that area. It would ultimately be paid through by taxpayers, whatever cost is involved.
Paid for the taxpayers of that area?
Of that area.
Yeah. Okay. Director Taylor, is that a new hand or a left?
I'm just
go ahead.
Curious if Area B would be out of just this aspect of it or out of the service area.
He's asking to be out of the bylaw, is my understanding, but for clarity, Ms. Molden?
So the service area bylaw includes all electoral areas, and all it does is provide the authority to consider business licensing. It doesn't put any regulations or restrictions. But these regulation bylaws do actually lay out the details. So my understanding is that Director Bush is asking to be out of any bylaw that would regulate the requirements, and that is this bylaw today.
Okay. So everybody's clear on that? I'm not seeing any further discussion. So on the amendment to remove Area B, all those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Just Director Gettins opposed. That motion carries. So we do have the amended motion. Oh,
I'm in favor. It was just a.
oh, it was just a delayed hand? Sorry about that. Flashed several times afterwards, so I thought it was for sure opposed. But
I think I was trying to
Director
take it down.
No problem. Director Federico?
I have a question for staff on the.
Sure, on the main motion,
on
go
the
ahead.
motion. Will there be a prorated rate if they were to come get their business license, say not in January, but kind of subsequently throughout the year? Will it still be a $500, doesn't matter when you get it, or would it be prorated throughout the year?
CAO?
I'm recommending that it's not prorated. There's a specific fixed cost to begin with, and you can't guarantee just because it's the middle of the year, you're not going to get any complaints in the second half of the fourth quarter of the year. So it's not uncommon to have a full rate regardless.
Okay, the intent is keep the rate the same. All right, no further questions? Was there, Director Gilbert?
Sure, thanks through the chair. It's just a comment on, in regards to like this price and everything. You know, I think staff done a good job to try to come to a balance here. I'm pretty sure there's people who are running the Airbnb are going to back that $500 within the first week of operation. Like,
yeah, for the most part. All right, I'll call a question. This is a corporate vote. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? All those hands must be late online. Director Coyne is opposed? Okay, just Director Coyne Senior is opposed. The motion carries. C6.
To the chair.
Official community plan and zoning bylaw amendments, CAO.
Thank you. The purpose of this report is to talk about electoral area A, D, and F official community plan bylaw and the Okanagan Valley zoning bylaw 2800-2022 be amended in order to address a number of mapping, typographical, or other issue identified through day-to-day use of the bylaws. And the recommended motion is that the official community amendment bylaw number 3089-2025 and the Okanagan Valley zoning amendment bylaw 2800.45-2025 be read a third time.
Okay, this was one of the ones from this morning's public hearing, so looking for a motion to move that forward. Moved, seconded, thank you. Any discussion? Not seeing any hands, I'll call the question. This is a rural vote. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? The motion carries. Down to C7, Area C, CAO.
Thank you. This application is seeking to amend the zoning of the subject property in order to allow for a two-lot subdivision to unhook a parcel divided by a highway, and the recommended motion is that electoral area C, official community amendment plan 2452.24/2024, and the Okanagan Valley Amendment Bylaw 2800.41 be read a third time and adopted.
Okay, and this one is again from this morning's public hearings. I'll go to Director Chahal.
Through the chair, I would like to move the staff recommendation.
Mover, thank you. Is there a seconder for this? It's on the floor. Any discussion on this one? Seeing no hands, again, rural vote. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. That brings us down to community services, Naramata. No, oh, C8. Oh, I missed one. My mistake. Small scale multi-unit housing implementation, CAO.
Thank you. The purpose of this report is to amend the Okanagan Valley zoning bylaw 2800 in order to ensure compliance with the Local Government Act requirement for small-scale multi-unit housing, and the administrative recommendation is that the Okanagan Valley zoning amendment bylaw 2800.53/2025 be adopted.
Right, someone prepared to move this? This is the one to get us into full compliance, so there's a mover. Thank you. Seconded. Perfect. It's on the floor. Any discussion? Rural, all in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. And I don't think I think that was a late hand, but I'll clarify. You were in opposed, Director Taylor, or in favor?
I'm in favor.
The hand was really slow. So that was all. It's down to D1, Naramata Parks Maintenance.
Thank you. Before I start reading the administration recommendation, normally this would be a straightforward operational issue, which would not go to the board. However, when the board was presented with the purchasing policy and to discuss the rules and controls for RFPs, I stated that we're going to be transparent 100% wherever there's an anomaly where the rules didn't apply 100%, and no one in this case in the RFP actually was given the contract, mostly because it was over budget by $59,000. Staff's going to be here to answer the questions, but the purpose of this report is to maintain the parks and amenities in Naramata to the desired service level. The two recommendations are that the RDOS assume maintenance of the Naramata parks using its own forces, and that the board approve the program change request to reallocate $59,000 from the contract service to salaries and wages to the specific budget accounts in the electoral area E Parks and Recreation Service Area, and the creation of a new seasonal 0.66 park attendance position be added. The reason that we're actually asking for it to go in-house is because of the material increase in the RFP, and because the no bidder got the RFP, I want to bring it back to the board for consideration. Staff's here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, I'll go to the area director for direction on this.
I'll move the administrative recommendation, but then I'd like to speak to it.
Okay, mover, seconded, thank you. Go ahead, Director Federico.
Thank you, through the chair. Quick question for staff. So because of the 0.66, then is this individual going to be dedicated to Naramata for that time slot? So that way, we've had somebody who's been super committed, lived in our community, was able to respond to things in that timely manner. And so there's a service level kind of, I'll say, expectation in there. And so just wanting to confirm that that will be maintained.
Go to staff.
Yes, through the chair. Our staff will have a committed presence there. This is only one seasonal position, which will work 4 or 5 days a week. Parks are a 7-day-a-week business, so you will see many different faces and different skills there. But the intent at this point is to have as dedicated a resource as possible throughout the week and year.
Any follow-up to that, Director Federico?
Yes, not follow up to the question. So thank you to staff for that. I just want to make it put out publicly a thank you to our longtime dedicated parks contractor who's given many tireless hours, sweat, blood, tears, probably literally, in our park. So just want to extend a thank you to him. And we look forward to working with staff and just that maintenance and the service level that we have in our community. So.
Okay. Any further discussion on this? Director Coyne? Not turning on?
Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. My question is around the fact that all the bids came in so much higher. Did you put like a cap on, like this is what we're asking for, or did you just leave it open? Because it is quite drastic, the difference, right?
Go to staff.
This bid, we did not post a maximum number. We post the desired service level and service of work and let the bidders determine the cost to perform those duties.
Okay. I just know the previous director, Carla, fought pretty hard for that position, so I just want to make sure that we know exactly why it was where it was. Thanks.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion, again, corporate vote. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll do item D2
Mark,
and then we'll. Who?
Mark, it's Sabrina.
Director Monty?
Yes.
Okay, so.
It's a bit late now, but I just wanted to share a word of caution. I know Khalidin really loves what Justin and his staff do now, but there was a time that we were in this exact position where we had our own contractors that were managing the park, and I know at many times the community did wish that they could have that back. So, and I know that's exactly what Director Coyne had shared, that this was something that was quite passionate for Nomada. So I'm sort of sad, but I also understand the direction that the director is going in.
Okay. D2, we'll go to the CAO on this, the acceptance of the donation of funds for Adria Tunnel, and then we're going to break for lunch after this one.
So thank you, Chair. Something new in that we've been getting some material donations that are, it's awesome, and I thank all the individuals that are donating. But there's a consequence to that I want the board to actually formally accept these donations because at that point, you know that there's going to be a operational increase in the taxes next year. And so it doesn't come as a surprise, similar to the Adria Tunnel that was actually increased budget, not materially, but increased in enough. In this case here, it's going to be the same thing. And so this report is to talk to the board about to enhance visitors' experience at the Adria Tunnel along the KBR by implementing various trail improvements. These enhancements will include, but are not limited to, upgrading to the trail installation of picnic tables, benches, placement of garbage bins, the addition of wayfinding signs, and the potential installation of a pit toilet pending provincial approval. And the recommended motion is that the Board of Directors accept the grant funds for the Okanagan-Similkameen Tourist Association in the amount of $271,893.83 and approve the accompanying memorandum of understanding to facilitate trail improvement and amenities at the Adria Tunnel along the KBR Trail. And staff's here to answer questions.
Okay, I'll go to Director Federico. Direction.
I'll move the administrative recommendation.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion on this? Director Gilbert and then Coyne.
Yeah, thanks for the chair. And this is, I'd like to reverberate the word of caution when we get things donated to governments. You know, for example, we got donated the Kiwanis Pier. That was, I think, 40. I think that was it was worth 40. It was built for $45,000 in 1980, and to replace that pier is now $1.8 million. So it is a word of caution that when you accept things, that you must also ensure that you probably have funds that are going into a reserve to maintain it 20 to 30 years down the road.
Valid point. Director Coyne.
Yeah, the same thing. You know, I voiced my concern when this first came up, and I'm going to voice my concern again. It's a great program. It's a great idea. I'm just concerned with the long-term maintenance and ongoing costs that the tunnel is going to add to the taxpayers, because it will be regional and it will impact all of us. So.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Oh, Director Taylor?
Yeah, I think Director Coyne just clarified this is a regional asset as opposed to an area asset.
It is a regional asset, but I'll check with the double check with the CAO.
It's charged against regional trails where everyone pays.
Okay. Anything further, Director Taylor?
Nope, that's it. Thank you.
No. And Director Monteith, is that a new hand? I'm not hearing anything, so I guess not. Director Bush.
Yeah, so if there was a major catastrophe regarding the tunnel and it caved in or something, we could just leave it too, couldn't we? We wouldn't have to spend $1 billion to fix it up, right?
I think that's a determination at the time, but I'll check with staff.
It would be, the board would have to consent to do it, so the board can stop it or approve it.
All right. No further discussion. Again, corporate vote, all in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Them slow hands are hard to determine sometimes, but if they're not, we will have to have them showed at us. Okay, we will break for lunch and get back here a little before 1:45. Is the time frame. So lunch is available there, folks.
And you know what's funny? Do you ever get where you got a really strong community person that's really smart, they work with upper levels of government, get to know things, but they don't know how regional district works, and they just, you have to kind of redirect their flame and passion. It's like, we're going to this. I'm going after the staff. We have to, it's like, well, then you don't be our staff. Yes. Coming through the political end of it.
We're good? Thanks, Adam. If we could get back to our seats, we'll get started here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
But it's just trying to happen.
Okay, we will reconvene. First item up, the 5-year financial plan. Are we waiting for somebody, CAO, or?
Yes, sir, we're waiting for the deputy CFO, but I can read the.
You can get us started?
Started.
Okay, over to you.
I'll talk really slow.
No.
So, background, through the Local Government Act, the Regional District has the authority to improve fees and charges services that are provided. Although the bylaw can be amended throughout the year, administration brings the
I
bylaw
think we're on
forward.
the wrong one, aren't we? Are we on?
Oh, wrong one. It is.
You're really talking. Now you're fast.
It worked. It worked.
F or E1?
E1.
There we are. Financial plan.
Here it is. Okay. So, start off right here. The 2025-2029 five-year financial plan has reviewed by the board at two different budget meetings, and on January 9th, 2025 was the first reading. This is for bylaw 3102-2025, which includes, you received it in your files, Schedule D and E, which are attached. The recommended motion is that the 2025-2029 five-year financial plan, number 3102-2025, be read a third time and adopted as amended to include Appendix A. Now, it says as amended because there's an alternate one that there's some recommendations to amend it based on what you've seen. There's on top of that, there's some recommendations that the CFO and the Deputy CFO have. They are both here with the presentation that I see and able here to answer your questions.
Okay. Mr. Making, go ahead.
All right, we'll start the presentation. So as of third reading, the overall tax rate position was 5.17% for 27,817,529 for the region as a whole. Just as a reminder, these were the grant and aid requests that were the board approved. There's 4 of them. Same with a reminder on the full-time equivalents that were approved. And the program change requests that were also approved. So now we'll get into the adjustments that happened between the second reading and today. So these is for Area A. We had to move some community parks money in order to be in the bylaw compliant. Area B was the same thing. We had to move some stuff around to be bylaw compliant. This is Area C. They requested to buy a drone at the Willowbrook Fire Hall. And then there was some money added to the shredder for Oliver landfill. Area D, there was some capital requests by the director. Then there was some Area E, which was increased due to booking, adding booking onto recreation. Then there was some Area F. There were some riding ring updates, which were requested by the director, and a pump track. Then Area I, there were some projects asked for. And then we got some grant funding for the speed signs. So this is just showing that funding for Area D, I, and E. And then this was the movement of the Normatta maintenance contract into wages due to a failed RFP. And then to move some capital wages from the operating side to the capital side for Area B parks. And these were some movement of wages from operating to capital. This was some finalization of bin funding. There's 2 pages of that, 3 pages of that. Then the liquid waste management plan, we had to update the carry forward amount, just housekeeping. Same with the next couple of pages is just housekeeping to make a more accurate representation of the carry forward amounts. These are the same thing. So there was lots of movement in the carry forwards. And that was it for changes at third reading. Since third reading, the last 2 weeks, I had 5 other requests. One was from Oliver. They were asking for 2 more transit stops, which the director for Area C had agreed with. So that will have to be added to Oliver and Area C. There will be a slight tax requisition increase for Area C and Oliver, but it does not affect anyone else in the room. Area E had an increase in grant and aid and a decrease in rural projects for the exact same amount, so that will not affect the tax requisition for Area E. Emergency management, we realized that the Tiger Dam project had not been recognized on the budget, so we added that onto the budget this year. That again does not affect tax requisition because it's fully grant funded. Area I had some unexpected hydrant expense that we have added onto the budget for them, but that should have no tax implication for Area I either, as it's funded. And then Area D has asked to reduce the capital reserve in parks and trails by $7,500, so there will be a slight decrease to the Area D tax. But they've also asked to add 2 unlimited yard waste events, which will affect the user fee for the people in that area. And that's all the changes I have so far.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there any questions or direction from the board on this? Director Roberts is moving it as amended. That's with those amendments that you just read out as well, okay? Seconded. Any discussion? Director Taylor?
Yes, I guess I'm looking for a further amendment to make 2 changes.
And which ones are those?
I want to reduce my contribution to capital reserves in each of Parks and Recreation and rural projects by $7,500 each. And
those ones he's already captured.
Oh, he got those. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and then the unlimited waste pickups?
Yes, I want to add 2 per year, although there'd only be 1 per year next year because it's a half year.
Yes, those are already captured in
Okay,
there.
great. I'm sorry you cut out, or the system cut out for a minute there. Thank you very much, Chair.
No problem. Director Gettens.
Thanks, Chair. We had a little bit of back and forth on email around the unlimited waste. So I just wanted to make sure, does this go to the user fees or is this part of this tax requisition here? Because, anyways, man, you know that we've been going back and forth in this email. So is this the time to bring it up? Because do I need to commit to these extra yard waste pickups right now, or is that in the fees and charges?
The yard waste is all in the fees and charges bylaw.
Okay.
Same with if you decide to change your bin funding, it is also in the fees and charges. It's not in the, we'll see it in the budget, but it doesn't affect tax requisition.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything further? Not seeing any hands. Holy moly. I was expecting a little longer. Okay, we've got the motion on the floor. Obviously, it's a corporate vote, weighted. We'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Just Director Weeb opposes? I believe that makes it carry. Correct. Down to legislative services. Here's the RDOS fees and charges bylaw, CAO.
Thank you. So as you stated, this is the fees and charges bylaw, as I was saying incorrectly in the wrong agenda. Through the Local Government Act, the regional district has the authority to impose fees and charges for services that are provided through various bylaws. The recommended motion is a bylaw number 3097-2025, a bylaw of the regional district, Okanagan-Sumilmean, be set fees and charges, be read a first time. And Staff is here to answer any of your questions.
Direction on this? Somebody prepared to move it? Director Taylor?
Well, I do
You
have
moving it?
I do have
Or
a question. I have a question of staff first.
Sure, go ahead.
There's a reference to in Kaleden on, I think it's page 570, there's a reference to Heritage Hills and Lakeshore Highlands. And I just couldn't understand why there was a reference to those communities in Area I's fees and charges.
Might be a holdover from before the split, but we'll.
Section 3.2.3. And it's page 570 of our package.
Can we
So we'll
address
have
that,
to,
Ms. Mould?
yeah, we'll have to get back to you on that. I'm not really certain. That might have been something that came from the department. But I
Holdover?
suspect it's probably just a location holdover. Yes.
Okay, they'll definitely look at that. This is only first reading, so.
And so follow on that, I would like an amendment. Area I has a 25% reduction for hall rentals by local outfits, and I would like to offer the same in Area D for our facility rentals.
Okay, they're shaking their head okay on that.
They're shaking their head, okay?
Okay, yeah. Nodding.
Okay. Nodding. Thank
Sorry,
you, Chair.
I got what you meant after the fact, but slow today. Anything further, Director Taylor?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Director Bush?
So, on Schedule 4 bylaw enforcement fees, do I have to remove Area B out of there again? Or does that just automatically come off?
If he's not in that bylaw, I suspect it would automatically come off.
We'll clean it up. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Director Gettens, is that a new hand or an old one?
Yeah, it's new. So I just want to make sure with, I think Lisa's at the table. Is Lisa at the table or no? Oh, sorry. Yeah, I just want to make sure that I'm unclear from the emails that we had last night about the yard waste pickup and the unlimited yard waste pickup. So from now until the end of June, it's every other week. After June, there's just one more unlimited yard waste pickup for Area F. Is that right?
Go ahead, Lisa.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there's one more unlimited yard waste pickup plan, or two more, sorry. There's two planned for the fall between July and November.
July and November. And if I would like to do more, I add it to here at the fees and charges.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's $2.03 per event to add to the user fees.
Okay. And then when do we need to pass this fees and charges bylaw by if this is first reading?
Go to Ms. Molden.
So this bylaw typically goes along with the budget. So we would be aiming to pass it by the end of March. It comes into effect April 1st.
Okay, so I just need, sorry, I just got this last night, so I just need a little bit more time just to figure out what the schedule and how we divide it up, because I don't think that Red Wing needs as much as Sage Mesa and Greater West Bench, and so I just need to figure that out. So I have to just sit down with staff with that one.
Okay. Anything further here on the fees and charges? Someone prepared to move first reading? Moved, seconded, thank you. Any further discussion? Go ahead, Director Roberts.
Thanks through the chair. So I'm assuming when we're looking at the curbside pickup, that again, this is the annual rate, not in regards to having a prorated one this year only being six months, right? So when I look at Area G at, where am I? 247, that's the annual amount.
Lisa, can you clarify?
Thank you. Yes, that is the annual amount. It's one rate for the first half of the year and another rate for the second half of the year. So that's the combined annual charge for 2025.
Okay. Not sure if those are new hands, but Director Taylor?
Yeah, just confirming that my point raised in the previous agenda items was captured.
About the two pickups for unlimited pickups, I believe
Yep.
they're captured, yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Director Federico?
Thank you. Under 2.0, Naramata Parks and Rec, I have 2.1 facility rentals, 2.1.1.1 seasonal watercraft storage, April 1st to October 31st, promotional rate for 2024 only. We're not in 2024, so if that could be removed, that would be great.
Just cleaning it up.
Cleaning it up.
Okay. Anything further? Not seeing any hands, so we'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Brings us to the Gantt chart summary, CAO.
Thank you. So this is the first time that this organization has what we now call strategic program tracker. The Gantt chart summary listed the work plan for 2024. However, we didn't do what I would like, the full process where we put the hours in as we did with the strategic priorities. So there was a lot of promises that were made or commitments that were made that weren't able to be met because there was more work required than capacity. So there was some a large number of carry forwards. Some were actually canceled. But at the end of the day, we were 91% successful in meeting our commitments. And just so that the board knows, 50% of the exempt staff wages is based on performance. So 50% is based on that 91%, where everyone would get 50% of the 5-year rolling average times 91%. If the mathematics, and you can figure that out, I could send you some emails to show you what that means. But we're in the process of actually calculating everyone's performance evaluations. And that also, the other 50% is based on teamwork, compliance, things like that. So this is just for information only.
Okay, no problem. Director Coyne?
Do we need to move to receive and file it, or?
I think it's just for information at this
Correct.
stage, so thanks though. Anything further, questions? Not seeing any hands, we'll move on to the CAO reports. Oops. Director Federico, before I go to the CAO?
No, pertaining to the CAO report, I need to recuse myself from the first item.
Okay, well, let's get to the CAO report then. You're recusing, no problem.
I think that when someone recuses themselves, they have to say why they're recusing themselves. It
Just gives everybody an idea.
Exactly.
Sure.
I'm doing some contract work for the organization.
Right. CAO, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. This was an interesting and challenging report. Just want to start off with that. Talk about the background. This report is to inform the board of 2 issues concerning bylaw 2622/2013, which requires an amendment. These issues require addressing to ensure compliance and effectiveness of the service. Additionally, there is an opportunity to amend the contract associated with this bylaw, which could enhance the service. Before I read the administrative recommendation, just want to quickly talk about some background. The bylaw for this service was one of the, I'll say, worst I've ever seen. It actually included the contractor's name in the bylaw, which restricts the board from changing contractors. So one of the first recommendations is to allow the staff to change that. There's two opposing views in the contract, for the current contract. What the deal that was made between the 3 directors that are involved in this is that we cancel the last year of the contract, which is 2025, and that we give that contractor, which we are pretty well stuck with, first right of refusal. And with amendments to the contract, I've added some amendments to try to appease the 3 altogether directors. But the report does have 2 separate agreements. The agreement that I'm recommending is one that includes work that can be perceived as only being restrictive to Chamber of Commerce. The current contract that was eliminated or canceled did have some of those. I did a lot of research in determining if Visitors Information Center do work that can be perceived as Chamber of Commerce. And it's normal, from what I read, that they actually complement each other. Now, one of the things that I've also added in the contract, because there's lots to there, it's one of the biggest reports I ever did, is that the contractor for this service cannot associate itself with something else, with like the Chamber of Commerce. They have to keep it separate. Can they do it? Yes. We issue a number of contracts in this organization, and that doesn't restrict that contractor that was awarded whatever work we did to stop from working with other contracts and other issues. So we can't do that in this case here. So I can answer questions after I read the recommendations and just discuss why I recommended what I did. And the recommended motion is that the board direct staff to amend the 2622-2013 bylaw to remove the specific contractor's name on it from the contract and substitute third-party contractor. And that the board direct staff to commence negotiating with the prospective contractor using agreement number 2, which outlines the terms and conditions. That the board allow staff to waive the purchasing policy and award the 1-year contract with a 1-year extension. And that's the reason why it's here. Otherwise, it would be operational. It's the waiving of the RFP. And that the board direct staff to begin the service review as requested by the Village of Keremeos in accordance with the Local Government Act. So I have discussed the contract with the SCDA, the one that that's being recommended, and they are receptive to accepting it if the board approves it. The board must approve it first. And now I am here to answer questions.
Director Roberts, question?
Through the chair, I'd like to move the recommendation and then speak on it.
Okay, so you're moving the staff recommendation. Seconder, Director Bush is seconding. Speaking to it, go ahead, Director Roberts.
I just would like to say I really appreciate all the work that the CIO has done in this. And again, realizing that it was, I guess, for all intents and purposes, kind of a dog's breakfast in regards to how things were written up in the past and making things very confusing and difficult for how we move forward. And I think this is going to provide us a lot of different, or give us the footprint moving forward to be able to be more effective. The organization that we're dealing with, we've been happy with them. There's different things that they can or can't do, or things that we can provide, but that there's now clarity in separating different things. They do represent, as an organization, like their board has like the lead, the chair of the Lower Similkameen Community Services, which provides pretty much all our service, social services in the valley. People like the management of the gristmill, it goes on and on. It's very integrated within the community. A lot of good work done with the Similkameen Wine Association. So, you know, we get kind of the balance of just dealing with an info center, but at the same time dealing with an organization that is really kind of working throughout the whole valley and supporting all our needs. At this point in time, I think it's greater than 60% of the businesses that take services from the SCDA are actually from B&G, and the other third is from the Village of Keremeos. So the one thing that I wanted to add to that, what I did see in here, and I know we talked to the CAO before about it, was the fee structure. And I think we had a conversation with that with the village as well. I assumed it was going to be changed already, and I'm assuming then that it's waiting for the change of the service bylaw in regards to being more representative in regards to rather than just being a split, that it's tied to the residents. So throw that on to the CAO. And again, thank you very much.
CAO.
I was restricted to the bylaw, and that the bylaw not only would change the name of the contractor to the subcontractor or the contractor, but also in agreement with the 3 different directors, we'd sit down and determine what they recommend.
Okay. Anything further on this, Director Barkwell?
This
excuse me, the second paragraph, negotiating with the perspective, or do you mean prospective contractor? And even that is a bit vague. Is this prospective contractor the current contractor that wouldn't that be better to say, to say with, or else a prospective contractor, which is kind of weird too.
CAO?
It should have said I've negotiated with the current contractor and they've accepted the terms of the new contract. That's what it could say. So the negotiations is actually accepting the contract for them is contingent on the board approving it today. But it's already, if the board approves it today, it's automatic for the SCDA.
Okay. Anything further on this? I'm missing anybody? Director Weeb?
Well, just to clarify, I mean, there isn't a we. I mean, Director Roberts can speak to his perspective on the SCDA. The Village of Keremeos has been very direct in our assessment of the situation. It's why we're asking for the review. It's an interesting thing to be in a service agreement where there's 5 voices in one spot and it gets changed when it is one of 3. And so part of the review and in assessing that, I've said this phrase a couple of times, that good fences make good neighbors, and we can agree between the agreement and the service bylaw, there was lots of gaps. So there's some necessary work. Obviously, we had a proposal, it got amended, which is typical, and so I won't be supporting the motion as recommended, but I recognize that's not actually going to matter. So kind of case in point. So my vote will be no. I've asked for the review, but I'm not in support of the recommendation.
Okay. Director Taylor and then Conants?
Yeah, I guess I'm feeling very new to this and feeling uncomfortable pushing something. What it seems like we're doing here is pushing something or forcing something onto one party of a contract, and that at the moment doesn't sit very well with me. And I'm not sure if time would help identify a different solution. I don't know.
I'm not sure on that. I'll go to the CAO first.
The alternate recommendation is the solution that the village would prefer. It has that, the contract has what they suggested.
Okay.
First follow up then?
Go ahead, follow up.
I mean, if we take that option, then the 2 area directors are in the same position that the village is in at the present. Is that correct?
They're shaking their head. Yes, it's
yeah,
one of those situations.
Okay.
Okay, Director Conans and then over to Coyne.
Yeah, I just had a couple of questions. I'm having trouble understanding a little bit, but are we doing a 1-year contract because there's no time for the season to go for a full RFP, and not going for the RFP because there's no time for that?
CAO.
First of all, the bylaw has to change. According to the bylaw, we're restricted to only that one contractor. Second, I'm actually asking, because of we don't know how long the bylaw is going to take, I'm asking for a 1 year plus a 1 year extension, because that way we're following the bylaw. Otherwise, we put ourselves at risk from the public coming back towards us and suing us.
Follow up? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
just a second question. Thank you for that. I just had a question for Director Weeb. You're voting against this, and because you want the alternate, I can't actually find the alternate. But why are you? Can you just explain why I should vote against this, or why you think I should?
Director Weeb.
Well, so here's the kicker: is we're bound by a bylaw that can't be amended. So we were given the choice of changing the service agreement a little bit, mostly around chambers of commerce. The fact of the matter is that the building that was in question and the contract was made back, my understanding is when it was called Keremeos and District Chamber of Commerce. There have been a number of changes over the years, but I found out just recently that society technically still exists at the Board of Trade. there was a bit of a question as to whether it's actually been reactivated, which doesn't make any sense because that doesn't exist in town, so I don't know why it would be showing activated. But also too, the organization made it very clear that they're not a chamber. So that's fine, but the agreements that we had in place were with what we thought. I mean, even on their sign out front, it says Chamber of Commerce. Hence, there's been a little bit of frustration, changing community events and doing different things that they may or may not have a right to do, and you can argue that it may or may not be in the contract, but it was definitely not in the spirit that has been going on for decades. So I get that there's two sides to a dispute. I just would prefer to go to mediation. What I'm hearing is that we can't get there because we're obligated to have a contract. So we might have to vote this yes, but I would still vote no.
Okay, Director Coyne, or did you have a follow-up further? Okay, Director Coyne.
Yeah, I was going to make the point that there is an existing bylaw that Karameas is part of, and they have asked for a review of the bylaw, but until that review is completed, they are still part of this bylaw. So this is a revision of the bylaw. But this goes back 20 years ago. This goes back to when the Karameas Chamber of Commerce ceased to operate, and they reformed themselves as the Smoking Country, SCDA, whatever, I can't remember the acronym. And at the time, the contract was given to them as there was a number of Chamber of Commerces back in the early 2000s that decided they didn't want to exist anymore because they were sick and tired of being confined by the rules of the Chamber of Commerce. And Princeton almost went the same way. We had the Business Enhancement Association as well as the Chamber of Commerce, and it was touch and go which way they were going to go. Karameas pulled the plug and became the Smoking Country Economic Development Association. And they continued on doing the same job that they're doing right now. And that's when the contract was, and the bylaw and all that stuff was handed over to that organization. Like I said, this goes back a long, long, long way. And I understand there's, disagreements between the village and the organization. But there is a bylaw that we have, and the village has asked for that review to be removed or otherwise, but that takes time. And until then, we have, in good faith, continued on up until this point.
Okay. Anything further? Director Bloomfield?
Thank you. And so the way I see it, we've got a bylaw that's not really being adhered to, that deals with the operation of a building that's currently empty. Is that right?
I'm not sure. CAO?
And, yeah.
That is correct. However, because they're no longer part of that building, what we made depending on what the board does today, they can use the recreation center and have a kiosk in there. So they need a place to be able to function.
Okay.
So if you're looking for a new agreement, is it possible just to rescind this bylaw and then have a new bylaw and start it fresh with a new agreement?
I think it's the time frame to make that happen. That's the issue, but I'll go to staff.
Oh.
Yeah, that's something that can happen. All parties have to agree, and this bylaw was formed with public assent. Therefore, it would have to go back out to the public with probably AAP or referendum to rescind it as well. So there's your timeline.
It's a timing thing. That's part of the issue. Director Roberts.
Yeah, thank you, the chair. And that's kind of case in point, some of the issues. When we talk about stuff about 1, 2, or 3, or people feeling that it's going against one way or the other, the issue is how things were written out, how the bylaw was written out, how the contract was written out. And so, for instance, you end up with two parties that, in regards to the contract that they saw in regards to the services that they deemed supportive, everything's fine. Then you have another party that wanted other things, but didn't feel and was frustrated and is angry, but didn't fall within the contract. And at a point in time, a lot of this stuff happened we weren't fully aware of some of the stuff that was in disagreement when we might have been able to come up with a way. But again, it comes back to and I think we had an email and a discussion with Director Wiebe. I thought we were stuck with a service bylaw, and that's, what turned out to be the issue. But it seemed like at multiple times we had different layers. We had dealing with a facility lease at one level, then we have a contract at another level, and we had a service bylaw at another level. And it's just like I said before, it was a dog's breakfast, and it's just set things in a way that created a lot of hard feelings that weren't necessary, because if we had everything done clearly initially with, process in place and all that, it would have been a lot easier for all of us to work together. But I'm happy now that we're kind of clearing the water up, and then we'll be able to have an evaluation of the service agreement, or not agreement, sorry, the bylaw. Yeah, and then, but again, it's a process, and it's painful.
Director Gilbert.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. I guess just to clear my water a little bit more here, I'm just kind of wondering why are bylaws being created for service agreements?
Yeah. It's one of those things about a regional district. Yeah. You need a service to do anything, so. Anything further on this? Seeing nothing, I'm going to call the question. Corporate, all those in favor? Thank you. Those opposed? Opposed. Director Wiebe wants it on the record. And Director Taylor, I'm assuming as well. So, okay, it carries. CAO, another item from your section?
Just based on the workshop that we had earlier on strategic priorities, there is a recommendation that goes with it. Again, with the recommendation, just be cognizant that it is a living document. The board can change it at any time. And the recommendation is that the board approve the 2025 strategic priorities work plan as recommended by staff.
Okay. Director Roberts moving it? Or you want to move it and amend? Making a question in regards to maybe. Okay, question, go ahead.
All right, thank you through the chair. So all that I was discussing before around the outcomes from our governance review and not really clearly seeing it in there, I'm wondering if that's a part of the 2025 that we can have. I've seen that when you talked earlier, the CAO, about parts that he was dealing with review. Is it in there as a whole that we look at how the RDOS as a whole is governed? Thank you.
CAO?
We're going to look at that. I believe that there was, one of the requests was the electoral area committees that we set up, and I believe that's would be included in what you're discussing. And we'll just make sure that's in there, and we'll get back to you, because there's a lot in there, and if it isn't, it should be in there. So giving you a request that you add that if it isn't.
Okay. Director Taylor, is that a hand?
Yeah. I don't know if I'm the only person here, but I'm feeling like there's a heck of a lot of information here. Haven't got my head around it completely. And personally, I would even move to table this to our next meeting. I think it's great work. I really support the direction it's going in, but personally haven't got my head around it yet. And I'm not sure that all the things I want are actually included.
I'm going to go to the CAO.
So that's why we made it a living document. So you can change it any time during the year. And if there's something that you want to bring up, one of the things at the CAO update, every CAO update is there any concern about the strategic priorities where you want to make changes? So that is going to be something that I will ask the CEO to actually add that CAO update strategic priorities.
Follow up.
Sure, go ahead.
But my understanding is we then need a board motion to change it, correct?
We're going to need a board motion to change it either way.
Yeah, yes, that's correct. If you're making some changes today, it can't be made today because we'd have to come back and see what the effect is. It's hour for hour. So it's not going to change the process.
Director Roberts?
I'd like to move the staff recommendation.
Moving it, okay, seconded, it's on the floor. Discussion? Was that a hand to discuss, Director Coyne, or was that seconding? Okay, thank you for that. Anything further to discuss on this? On the understanding that we can amend as needed.
Correct.
And it's probably wise if most folks have a discussion with staff and make sure the projects you're after are being dealt with either in the plan itself or as regular work that staff would be doing as an ongoing basis. Seeing no more hands, I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Is that an opposed, Director Taylor?
No, I went along.
No problem, it carries. Anything further, CAO?
Just one thing. 2 weeks ago, I was represented by a great interim CAO, and just want to thank her for taking over my place. I was at a CAO conference where there was at least 160 CAOs throughout British Columbia. And one of the things that you may be interested in is that there's going to be a coordinated effort to go to the regional districts and councils to see if the province is willing to create a purchasing authority similar to the municipal finance authority, where this authority would purchase bulk goods, and we as local government would be able to draw from them. And one example that they used is if these tariffs do go through, it would be cheaper to buy ductile pipe from Europe and ship it in. And if we buy it, if this authority buys it in bulk, we as a local government who all use ductile water pipe will be able to save money. So that's, you're going to be receiving something from me. What the local government are going to get all the same letter. We're just going to change it from whatever municipality and local regional district to ours. So that is in the works.
Okay, thanks for that. Anything further there? Nothing?
Nothing further.
Okay. Dealt with verbal updates. Anything to report from your areas? Director Roberts.
Yeah, thank you, the chair. I was initially going to try to organize a, what do you call it, a director's motion, but it became a little bit more convoluted. But in our area, we have the Cathedral Lakes Lodge, we have the Cathedral Lakes Park, and then with the previous fire, it's trying to come up with a way. They're working on getting a bridge put across that's going to tie with the province, but you know, litigation, land use, you know, they've got things in place, but it's taking forever. And we also have kind of an environmental disaster on the other side where you have piles of burned cars and stuff, where the park's access and the lodge's access with gas and oil and that. So I've reached out to the different concerned parties, trying to get them to get a letter, and then hoping that down the line we could maybe do a letter of support to provide for the province in regards to them. If, you know, we look at right now in regards to, we want our military to do things, they could always come down, put up a Bailey Bridge and then take it down. And it's a good training. And I was a part of something before when we'd had the flooding in Princeton, and the engineers corps that were out of Chilliwack came down and dismantled the bridge. So, you know, I'm looking for solutions going forward, but I figured that would be a start. And I just figured everybody should kind of know what, you know, any kind of help or ideas that you have. But I do think it'd be kind of good to get the BCDs down here and putting a bridge up and taking her down after we clean up the mess. So thanks.
All right. Anybody else have anything to report from their areas? Communities? I'm missing, oh, Director Coyne, Senior, go ahead.
This is not really a report, just I'd like to go on a rant, but I'm not going to. I'm going to try and keep this to being civilized. I was really impressed this morning with the, one of the vote to forward the motion on in Area C to the Agricultural Land Reserve to allow them to build staff housing for their farm workers. I think with what's happened in the last week with our borders and that, you know, we protect agricultural land. We think we protect agricultural land in British Columbia to a very high degree. But we have to start to think a little bit deeper here in that we have to protect the industry as well as the land. Because when we make things more difficult for farmers to actually be able to do their job and to grow things, because you can't have a housing unit on your property where you have to have people work. Because anybody that's ever worked around ground crop industry knows that it's incredibly labor intensive. And we have to allow people to be able to have a place to work when they come here to work, or places to live when they come here to work. And I think that, you know, our mindset has been, no, we're not going to develop anything on agricultural land that isn't actually something planted in the dirt. Well, there's a hell of a lot more to agriculture than just the plants in the ground. And I think through our whole mindset of planning and the way we vote at this table, we have to think about the big picture a heck of a lot more than what we used to. It's not going to be so many pretty white fences and little cottages. There's going to have to be a lot more industrial agriculture and a lot more diverse agriculture in our area. Anyway, that's my rant. I said I wouldn't go on a big rant, but
so a little one will suffice.
A little one will suffice. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you, Director Coyne. Anybody else have anything to report on from their areas? Okay, moving on to other business, Chair's report. I'm not sure there's much to report on other director's motions. You asked me about the fire, not the fire commission, but the, it's through the fire commissioner's office. There should be a report coming to the board pretty soon on our approach in regards to the Fire Safety Act. I'll just double check with the CAO.
That's correct.
Okay. And as far as meetings, right now, there hasn't been any meetings in regards to that just lately. It's pretty much enacted. It's just how each regional district is going to deal with it as to whether we're going to have our own inspectors or whether we'll use the fire commissioner's office. So I'll see where the report goes when we get it. Director's motions. Anything or anybody wanting to make a director's motions? Shouldn't at this stage, since we just did the strategic priorities. So board members' verbal updates. I think we pretty much did that as well. If I missed anything, adjournment. Oh, lots of hands for that. It's on the floor. All in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, and have a great day.
I'm disgusted.
Half an hour.